Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. They relied entirely on the 3 void rubs to coordinate them. And even then, it was chaos. But Rhodes wasn't too concerned. In his experience, especially from playing games, when you were running a Zerg rush, the strategy was simple: flood the field with numbers and charge forward. Victory by sheer overwhelming volume. And so, they charged. The rat horde was caught completely off guard by the sudden, full frontal assault. They had barely settled at the perimeter of the village, eyeing the Void Knights as potential food, when the entire swarm surged forward like a tide of teeth and slime. With no choice, the rats fought back on instinct. The clash began the moment the front lines met. The air erupted with screeches and squeals as fangs collided with fangs. The Void Knights, mindless and aggressive, lunged at the nearest targets. Their thin double rows of needle-like teeth latched onto whatever they could grab: legs, tails, fur, ears. No strategy, just relentless fighting. Smaller rats were swarmed by multiple Void Knights at once. One might get its tail gnawed, another its ears, and a few unlucky ones ended up with 2 or 3 Void Knights latched onto their backs like living grappling hooks. Some larger rats turned the tables, swarming a Void Knight in return. The elastic, squishy bodies of the Void Knights were pulled and stretched like rubber bands as the rats tugged them in every direction. The area surrounding the village devolved into chaos. The once quiet fields were now a battlefield of tangled limbs, twitching tails, and shrill screams. Rats started in and out of the fray, while Void Knights jumped and twisted, attacking and being attacked. It looked less like a traditional battle and more like a massive, frenzied brawl, like 2 anthills going to war. And in this writhing storm of claws and fangs, it was impossible to tell which side was winning. At Rhodes' suggestion, Village Chief Jasper had mobilized all able-bodied villagers to surround the village and form a defensive perimeter. The weaker villagers, like the elderly and children, were assigned to hold lanterns and torches, while the stronger men and women took up farming tools and makeshift weapons, standing by in case any rats broke through the outer lines. Originally, all Rhodes meant was to remind them to stay alert in case a few rats slipped through. But to the villagers, this wasn't just a precaution. It was a battle for their home. For their survival. Rhodes sighed as he summoned raptors, merc wolves, and other summoned beasts to help with inner perimeter defense, just in case. He wouldn't allow even a single villager to be bitten. Not tonight. Myra stood beside him silently, giving him a playful yet exasperated pout. "You're showing off again," she said, a little annoyed. Rhodes grinned. "This fight's a bit shorter than I expected. I've saved some magic power, might as well put it to good use." Myra huffed. With her free hand, she morphed her arm into a demonic claw. Fist-sized orbs of crackling black magic appeared in her palm. She lobbed them into the rat horde like grenades. Boom. 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 The explosions lit up the night as the demonic blasts cleared swaths of enemies, one after another. Rhodes winced slightly at the damage to the road, but he tapped the blue sentinel and added the blue buff to Myra. If she needed to vent, he wouldn't stop her. After all, it wasn't people being blown up, it was rats and dirt. And if the road was ruined? Well, they could just repair it tomorrow. Strangely, the villagers didn't seem bothered by the exploding roadside. On the contrary, they cheered louder. The sight of so many rats being obliterated was exhilarating. Rhodes gave the golem another pat. "Your turn. Bring out the floating cannons." The blue sentinel stomped forward, each step echoing like thunder. As it moved, 2 smaller drones detached from its body and hovered over the battlefield, unleashing blue energy blasts down onto the rats below. Screeches and squeals filled the air as waves of rats were cut down. Back inside the village, the people erupted in applause and cheers. The rat corpses quickly piled up. Though some Void Knights were lost in the chaos, their numbers never stopped growing, dozens more spawned every minute. And unlike the rats, the Void Knights didn't feel pain. A rat would scream, retreat, or hesitate. But a Void Knight? Even with limbs gnawed off, it would keep flailing, keep biting. They didn't think. They didn't fear. They just followed orders and fought. Their mindless determination made the villagers feel an odd sympathy toward them, these adorable little bugs, as some now called them. The tide of battle had turned. What began as a desperate defense was slowly turning into a decisive victory. The rats, once so dominant in number, were now being pushed back. Chapter 277, A Great Victory. Generally, human armies tend to collapse once they suffer a certain percentage of casualties. But for rats, especially starving ones, that breaking point was clearly much higher. Even after more than half of the swarm was wiped out, they kept fighting. The first to flee was a rat that had earlier managed to steal and nibble on a corpse. Maybe it had just enough energy or sense to run. As the carnage continued, a few more rats began to bolt, this time the ones swarming the blue sentinel. Some had tried to climb it, gnawing at its stone armor with desperate fury. But no matter how hard they bit, all they got were cracked teeth. The sentinel didn't seem bothered. It stomped down on the vermin or bent over to crush them with its massive fists. Meanwhile, its floating sentry drones took care of the stragglers on its back, blasting them clean off with precision lasers. Still, the scene made Rhodes squirm a bit. He leaned toward Bill and asked, "Hey, could you grab me a few buckets of water?" "I'm on it." Bill had been watching the insect versus rodent showdown with wide-eyed fascination, but rushed off the moment Rhodes called for him. Myra tilted her head curiously. "What are you going to do with the water?" "Disinfect the golem," Rhodes replied, frowning a little. "It just feels gross letting all that rat gunk stick to it." "Wouldn't boiling water work better?" "Sure, but that feels a bit mean. Also, where would you even find a pot big enough to boil the entire golem?" "Wait. Huh?" Rhodes froze. Was she joking? Did she really imagine boiling the whole blue sentinel like soup? Or was she just teasing him again? The morally conflicted summoner fell into deep thought, rethinking his entire sanitation plan. Meanwhile, the battle raged on, but the tide had clearly turned. The rats were finally breaking. They scattered in droves. Some managed to drag a void mite or two with them, but most were still being hunted down by the relentless wave of Myra's demonic blasts and the never-ending swarm of summoned bugs. Rhodes pointed toward the fleeing swarm. "Chase them down. Keep just behind and take out as many as you can." He wasn't talking to Myra, but to the trio of void drubs, who hissed in response and lumbered out of the village perimeter. On their backs, new void mites continued to spawn, flinging themselves forward with surprising speed, faster even than the grubs themselves. Village Chief Jasper hurried up beside them. "Mr. Rhodes, should we join the chase? If we act now, we could finish them off." Rhodes shook his head. "Leave the cleanup to me. You have something more important to focus on." "What's that?" Jasper puffed his chest out. "We'll do anything. Now that the rats are retreating, you'll need to start collecting the corpses before they start rotting. If left unattended, they'll become breeding grounds for disease." Rhodes added. "Make sure everyone wears gloves and covers their mouths. Also, the village's water supply might be contaminated. Make sure everyone boils their drinking water." Jasper followed Rhodes's gaze to the nearby buckets Bill had delivered. "Mr. Rhodes is so thoughtful. I'll get everything arranged right away," Jasper responded, rushing off with deep gratitude. "Did he misunderstand something?" Rhodes asked, blinking. "It's possible," Myra replied, chuckling softly. "But maybe it's just because you're that good at what you do. I'll be very proud if you praise me like this." "Well, how about I give you a reward?" "Nope." Myra quickly covered his mouth with her hand, her cheeks slightly red. "People are watching." The final sweep and cleanup lasted for nearly half an hour. The void mites chased the last of the fleeing rats into the dark countryside before finally disappearing into the night. Their work was done. A round of cheers erupted across the village. Though not every rat had been eliminated, the infestation had been crushed, and with the remaining void mites on patrol, it was only a matter of time until the stragglers were gone too. It was only early June. There was still time to plant fast-growing crops like summer corn, sorghum, soybeans, and late rice. If the villagers acted quickly, the harvest season could still be saved. And to think, all of this was thanks to a single mission worth just 200,000 jewels. The villagers quickly got to work. Armed with shovels, dustpans, and wooden rakes, they began gathering the mountain of rat corpses into centralized piles. After checking the wind direction, they constructed a simple incineration pit on the leeward side of the village and fueled it with firewood and charcoal. One by one, the corpses were burned away in cleansing flame. Even the ash wasn't wasted, it would become nutrient-rich fertilizer for the fields. The villagers swept up every remaining charred speck, not willing to waste a single grain. Though the night sky was dark, the village of Ravendell glowed with flickering firelight and the hum of effort and relief. It felt like the village had been reborn. Meanwhile, Rhodes was hard at work disinfecting his blue sentinel. He'd come prepared, carrying a small pouch of powdered disinfectant that could be mixed with water. After all, this was a rat extermination mission. Sanitation mattered. The golem stoically stood there, obedient and cooperative. It even squatted, stood, and laid down when asked, much to the amusement of the villagers. Myra watched the lumbering stone guardian, her head tilted and her expression soft. "It's kind of cute," she murmured. Despite being busy organizing the cleanup, Jasper still made time to check in on Rhodes. "Thank you for everything you've done tonight." Rhodes waved off the thanks. "Just doing my job. And, well, we'll help repair the fence and the roads tomorrow." Myra, slightly red in the face, scratched her cheek. "Sorry about that. I got a little carried away." "Please don't worry about it," Jasper said with a hearty laugh. "We'll patch those up soon enough." The old fence was already in poor shape, and the dirt road, well, potholes were nothing new to them. Compared to the threat they'd just eliminated, these minor damages didn't even register. Rhodes opened his mouth to say something in response, but a sudden wave of dizziness washed over him. His complexion turned noticeably pale. The blue sentinel, which had been obediently squatting nearby, flickered out of existence with a low hum. Far off in the distance, the 3 void grubs that had been chasing the last of the rats vanished one after another. The remaining void knights lingered for a moment longer, twitching faintly. And then they, too, dissolved into thin air, fading like mist in the wind. "Rhodes." Myra quickly stepped in, grabbing hold of him as his knees buckled slightly. "I'm fine," Rhodes muttered with a faint smile. "Just reached my limit. My magic's nearly drained. I need to rest." Jasper's eyes widened with concern. "Please, came to my home. We've already prepared a guest room." Myra looped one of Rhodes's arms around her shoulder and slid her arm around his back, supporting his weight. They'd only taken a few steps toward the village chief's house when Myra paused, glanced at him, and smirked mischievously. Without warning, she bent down, slipped her arm under his knees, and lifted him clean off the ground. "What? Myra?" Rhodes yelped. With an innocent smile, Myra cradled him bridal style. "It's just easier this way," she said sweetly. Rhodes blinked, caught completely off guard. "Yeah, but it's weird, isn't it?" "What's weird about it?" she teased. "You carried me like this after I fell into the lake, didn't you? Think of it as payback." She shifted his weight slightly and adjusted her grip as if she'd done this a dozen times before. "All right, I'll admit, it's kind of fun," Rhodes murmured, resting his head gently against her shoulder and closing his eyes. He could feel the warmth of her breath and the scent of her hair, comforting and familiar. "Don't squirm too much," Myra warned with a teasing tone. "If you move too much, I might just drop you." Chapter 278, Kiss. To be honest, even though Myra's hair smelled sweet, it still felt a bit awkward being carried like a princess in her arms. Especially with all the passing glances from the villagers, some amused, some understanding, and the knowing look from the village chief. It made Rhodes feel, well, mildly embarrassed. Myra, on the other hand, seemed to enjoy it more and more. The warm glow of torchlight flickered over her smile, softening her expression and hiding the rosy blush on her cheeks. Thankfully, the chief's house wasn't far. When they reached the door, Rhodes finally insisted on getting down. He had his pride. No matter how weak he felt, he wasn't about to be carried across the threshold like a bride, unless Myra received Satan's soul and forced it. Jasper, having clearly picked up on their relationship, had arranged just one room for them. After all, wizards often shared rooms on jobs, especially when they were partners. Even if the room only had a single large bed. It was totally normal. Myra told herself this confidently as she opened her suitcase and took out toiletries and pajamas. Rhodes caught a glimpse of 2 pieces of clothing that were suspiciously black and lacy. Before he could say anything, Myra clutched the garments to her chest, slammed the lid shut, and shot him a warning look before quickly heading to the bathroom. If it were any other mission, she wouldn't mind skipping a bath for a day. But today had been all about rats, and if she didn't wash off the smell, she wouldn't feel right. Rhodes collapsed onto the bed, half laughing at himself. Who goes snooping through someone's suitcase anyway? Still, Myra's reaction had only made him more curious about what she was hiding. Not that he had the energy to do anything about it. Losing so much magic power at once took a serious toll on the body. If he hadn't expected this, he probably would have passed out already. How long did girls take to shower again? To kill time, he summoned Warm. Warm flopped down next to him on the bed, the plush mattress bouncing slightly under its weight. Rhodes absent-mindedly rubbed its belly, smiling at the soft, familiar texture. He held up his hand to compare sizes and realized Warm's body length almost matched the length of his own torso. "You know, when you grow a bit more, I might be able to ride you to work," Rhodes muttered playfully. "Woo?" Warm looked up in shock, ears twitching. "Me? You want to ride me?" I'm cute. I'm fluffy. I'm not a mound. Rhodes tugged gently on its cheeks. What's with that look? I carried you when you were small. When you're bigger, it's only fair you carry me, right? Worm wiggled its ears in protest, mentally weighing the idea of cutting back on snacks so it wouldn't grow too fast. But give up food? Never mind. Let Rhodes ride. By the time Myra emerged from the bathroom, Rhodes was already halfway asleep. Unfortunately for him, there was no reward tonight. Myra was wearing simple beige pajamas decorated with a blue, heart-shaped cross on the front. Rhodes squinted at Myra's pajamas, feeling a strange sense of familiarity. He couldn't quite place it. Until a thought struck him like lightning. Wait. Aren't those the same as hers? The words nearly escaped his mouth, but he wisely swallowed them down. Worm chirped happily at Myra, waddling over to her. She often fed him treats, after all. As far as he was concerned, this future mistress was perfectly qualified. Myra strolled over, drying her damp hair with a thick towel. Worm, there you are. Hungry? I brought some snacks. That was as good as a command. If Myra asked whether Worm was hungry, then Worm was hungry. She pulled out a small pouch from her bag, opened it up, and started feeding Worm piece by piece. Of course, she didn't forget his master. Rhodes got a few bites, too. Now go take a shower and get some rest. Myra instructed, ushering him away. She handed the rest of the snacks to Worm, then sat down in front of the mirror and started blow-drying her hair. Rhodes came back in under 10 minutes, already clean and refreshed. Myra, however, was still working on her hair. She had her head tilted sideways, her arm twisted behind her head at an awkward angle to reach the back. It looked uncomfortable. Want me to help? Rhodes offered, stepping closer. Sure. Myra said with a small smile, handing him the hairdryer. Then she settled in and watched him in the mirror. The dryer was clearly a custom model, powered by rechargeable lacrima crystal embedded in the handle, a magic prop made for long journeys. Rhodes tried to remember how stylists handled this back in Magnolia, but his mental image of Tony the barber was fuzzy at best. Well, time to wing it. He gently took hold of a strand of Myra's long white hair and flipped the dryer on. Ear. The strong gust of wind blasted forward, whipping her damp hair into her face like fluttering ribbons. You. Myra squeaked, closing her eyes and raising her arms to shield herself. Panicking, Rhodes moved the dryer away, only to blow her bangs completely out of place. He quickly turned the dryer off. Oops. He said, a bit too gleefully. Myra stared at him through her now messy fringe and muttered. I thought you knew how to dry hair. She patted her bangs back into place and gave him a half-annoyed, half-amused look in the mirror. You're still laughing? Sorry. This is my first time drying someone else's hair. Rhodes admitted sheepishly. Myra sighed, then chuckled and took on the role of teacher. Okay, listen. For long hair, you have to do it like this. Right, now spread your fingers and comb through it gently while you dry. The airflow should follow the direction of the hair, so angle it back. And when you're working on the ends, hold them like this. You can use a stronger breeze here. Rhodes paid close attention, following her instructions carefully. He never realized how much work went into taking care of long hair. He glanced at the bottle of conditioner on the table and frowned. It seemed like she skipped a couple of steps. Or maybe applied it earlier? Either way, this was definitely more effort than he expected. It's not easy being a beauty, he thought to himself as he looked at Myra through the mirror, gently smoothing down her bangs. That gave him an idea. Is there a spell that helps with hair care? He asked curiously. Myra raised an eyebrow and caught his gaze through the mirror. There is. Want to learn it? Rhodes grinned. Sure, but honestly, I'd rather help you do this every day myself. Myra let out a soft laugh. You're just saying that to sound sweet. She stood up and gave him a little push. Now it's my turn. Sit. My hair's practically dry already. Rhodes protested as she pushed him into the chair. No excuses. You're not going to bed with damp hair. Left with no choice, Rhodes sat obediently. He watched in the mirror as Myra gently tousled his short hair with her fingers while the dryer hummed softly. One of her hands scratched his scalp in slow, circular motions. If my scalp didn't feel so good right now, I'd think she was just taking advantage of the situation, he thought, amused. It didn't take long to finish. But even after the dryer stopped, Myra didn't move away. Instead, her hands kept playing with his hair, stroking, fluffing, smoothing it down again. Okay, that's enough. Rhodes said, chuckling as he caught her hand and pulled it forward. Myra leaned in, wrapping her arms around him from behind, and rested her chin on his shoulder. Then she leaned a little closer and kissed his cheek. The warmth of her touch against his back and the kiss on his face made his heart flutter. Rhodes turned to look at her, and this time, Instead of overthinking, he kissed her properly, right on the lips. Myra's breath caught for just a moment. Her cheeks flushed a brilliant red. It was their first kiss, unexpected, yet somehow exactly right. She didn't pull away. There was no reason to run. So instead, she closed her eyes and leaned into it, letting herself melt into the moment. Rhodes shifted gently, turning to face her more fully. He wrapped his arms around her waist, lifted her up, and settled her carefully on his lap. Humphrey. Myra huffed softly as she bumped her forehead into his by accident. Their teeth clicked together awkwardly mid-kiss. Both of them froze. Then laughed. A little embarrassed, but unwilling to let it spoil the moment. Without saying anything, they leaned into each other again and simply hugged. Chapter 279, Idiot Rhodes regretted it now. Deeply. He should never have summoned Worm into the room in the first place. If he hadn't called the little guy over, Myra wouldn't have insisted it stay. And if Worm hadn't stayed, there wouldn't be this soft, fuzzy, overly affectionate barrier snuggled right between him and Myra. 5 minutes ago, they'd been cuddled up, lost in the moment. 5 minutes later, there was now a fluffy, squirmy third wheel parked between them like some impassable wall of fur. Rhodes let out a sigh. This is all Worm's fault. Are you? Worm blinked up at him innocently, sensing that he was being accused of something. Myra's voice drifted gently through the room. Go to sleep, already. You've got work tomorrow. She was right, of course. He'd been on his feet all day, rushed across the region, fought for hours last night, drained his magic to the brink, and still hadn't had proper rest. Oh, fine. Rhodes mumbled. Really, Worm wasn't to blame. This was the village chief's house, after all. It wasn't like he could complain about the accommodations. Still. If only the village had an inn. Or better yet, if only he'd picked a mission in a town with an inn. He closed his eyes, then opened them again. He knew he needed rest, but how could anyone sleep in this situation? On the same bed as Myra, separated only by a cuddly, blob-like companion who snored louder than a merc wolf. Myra, of course, noticed his constant tossing and turning. She sat up and turned to face him, her legs tucked neatly to one side as she leaned in slightly. If you can't sleep, she said with a mischievous little smile, I can help you. The neckline of her pajamas was slightly loose, but the room was too dim to see much of anything. Still, Rhodes could feel his pulse quicken. What's the plan? Gonna sing me a lullaby? He asked teasingly. Myra leaned forward and pressed a hand gently to his forehead. Something easier. He felt a familiar wave of magic rise from her fingers. Pink bubbles danced before his eyes. Then drowsiness settled over him like a blanket. This was unmistakable as sleep magic. You can use sleep magic too, Rhodes murmured, already drifting off mid-sentence. Myra smiled softly as his breathing slowed. Only if the target's not on guard, she whispered. She tugged gently at his cheek, watching his sleeping face. For someone so cautious during missions, Rhodes really did let his guard down around her. The difference made her grin. Thinking about how vigilant he'd been with even the coachman earlier that day only made it funnier. Her playful pinching softened into a gentle stroke as she leaned over and pressed her cheek against his. Good night, she whispered. When Rhodes woke the next morning, he found himself hugging something soft. His eyes blinked open to see a familiar face. And a long, drooling tongue already in motion. Worm. I told you, you're not a dog. Rhodes groaned and gently pushed him away, sitting up in bed. Across the room, Myra was already up. She sat in front of the small mirror, tying her long silver hair into a braid. A black ribbon rested between her lips, ready to finish the look. Morning, she said warmly, giving him a bright smile through the mirror. Rhodes had seen that kind of smile before. Back when he first woke up in the fairy tale guild. But this time, her eyes were different. Brighter. Softer. That quiet happiness in Myra's gaze made something warm bloom in Rhodes' chest, and it quickly spread to his face. Good morning, he said, his voice unconsciously gentler than usual. Then, as he sat up, a strange feeling of déjà vu washed over him. Wait a second. This scene. He suddenly gasped dramatically, clutching the quilt to his chest like a scandalized maiden. What did you do to me? Myra blinked, stunned for a moment. Her face flushed red, and she immediately turned away, glaring over her shoulder. You're not getting breakfast. Rhodes groaned playfully. So you did do something after all. A hair tie smacked him in the forehead. Still grinning, he got up and stretched. Want me to tie your hair for you? No thanks. Myra huffed, rummaging through the suitcase for another hair tie. With practiced ease, she gathered her hair into a stylish ponytail, dragon whisker bangs perfectly framing her cheeks. Rhodes watched the entire process with quiet admiration. It was a lovely hairstyle, especially with the sunlight catching the white strands. The hair tie she just used. Wasn't that the one he gave her? His gaze lingered a little too long. Myra, seeing his look in the mirror, felt both pleased and embarrassed. At least all that effort wasn't wasted. But still. Why did he have to look at her like that? Go wash your face already. She muttered, flustered. All right, Rhodes said, offering her the hair tie she'd tossed at him. But instead of taking it, Myra grabbed his wrist and slipped the tie onto it like a bracelet. There. You can wear it for now. Hey. No time to talk. We've got work to do. Myra gave him a firm push, shoving him into the bathroom and slamming the door behind him. The door creaked open again, just enough for Rhodes to poke his head out with a smirk. This hairstyle really suits you. And with that, he closed the door before she could say a word. Myra stood frozen for a second. Then smiled, her voice soft. Idiot. Of course, there hadn't been any breakfast punishment. Rhodes was only joking. The two of them had a hearty breakfast at the village chief's home before preparing to head out. Mr. Jasper and his wife greeted them at the door, both wearing dark circles under their eyes, but they looked energized. Rhodes asked, and Jasper explained that most of the village had worked late into the night, burning rat corpses and repairing fences. It had been a long night, but the joy of finally turning the tide had kept everyone motivated. Even the horrible stench near the incinerator couldn't ruin the mood. We're heading out to search the surrounding area, Rhodes explained. There are likely still stragglers hiding in burrows or among the fields. We'll do as much cleanup as possible, but it might cause some collateral damage. You saw what happened to the roads yesterday. Jasper waved a hand without hesitation. Don't worry about it. Do whatever you need to. Honestly, we'd be grateful even if you flattened half the village as long as the rats are gone. He laughed a little, but there was truth in his words. Most of the crops had already been ruined. Right now, their top priority was extermination. Once the rats were gone, they could reseed, rebuild, and start again. Even if the farmland ended up covered in pits and craters. Well, that just meant the soil was getting turned. Rhodes nodded. Got it. Then let's begin. Myra smiled warmly. You should remember to rest too. The two stepped out together. The sun was shining brightly today, white clouds drifting lazily across the sky. The morning breeze carried a scent that was less than pleasant. Given yesterday's events, it was only natural. As they walked through the village, the tired yet cheerful villagers greeted them one after another. Children ran up to them, chirping out sweet greetings of Big Brother and Big Sister. They might not have remembered their names, but it wasn't hard to figure out who they were. After all, the only unfamiliar faces around were the two wizards from Fairy Tale. The craters Myra had accidentally blown into the main road were mostly filled in, though some damage off to the side still remained. Not far away, the smoke from several incinerators still curled upward. The old fence, not untoppled during the battle, had yet to be repaired. Summon Brambleback. Rhodes summoned his towering tree monster and gave it a friendly pat on the claw. He pointed to the boundary lines near the village and gave it instructions. Let's rebuild the perimeter. Follow the markings here. I want it about this wide, and about that high. Whoa. The tree monster let out a low hum and lumbered along the village's edge. From its arms, thick vines grew and twisted, weaving themselves together into a sturdy lattice. It wasn't just a replacement fence, it was practically a wooden fortress wall. The villagers, though familiar by now with Rhodes' summons, couldn't help but gasp when they saw what the creature was doing. That's not a fence. Someone whispered in awe. That's a whole wall. Myra nudged Rhodes playfully. Is this what you came up with after destroying part of the guild the other day? Rhodes chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. What can I say? After that little incident, the Magic Council suddenly started taking me a bit more seriously. Taking his arm, Myra smiled. Now I see why they're calling you the fairy strategist of the new era. Rhodes puffed out his chest and said dramatically. Indeed, that's me. Though I'm but a humble servant of logic and long-term planning, doing my part to reduce the complaints about Fairy Tale. My achievements are trivial, really. Not worth mentioning. Myra grinned and ruffled his hair gently, like calming a boastful child. Yes. The great fairy strategist is the strongest. Rhodes leaned his head against hers in mock protest, lightly nudging her in response. She laughed quietly. This time, the nudge was far softer than the headbutt she'd traded with Urza during their infamous arguments. Once the Brambleback finished its work, wrapping the entire village in a new protective wall, the two climbed onto the Scuttle Crab to begin their mission for the day. Chapter 280, The Blue Pegasus Trio. There were many ways to hunt down the rats. For instance, merkwolves use their keen sense of smell to track them directly above the ground, swiftly catching any that crossed their path. If they found a mouse hole, Grugs could tunnel underground to dig the rats out. Meanwhile, Raptors patrolled the skies, swooping down to strike or firing sharp feathers to take out targets from afar. As for Rhodes and Myra, they sat comfortably atop the scuttle crab, supervising the operation. If not for the fact that the surrounding farmland had been devastated by the rat infestation, the scene would have been almost pleasant, a peaceful ride under the clear sky. Of course, their real job wasn't sightseeing. They were on alert in case any unexpected trouble cropped up. Watching the scattered progress of their summons, Rhodes muttered, "This feels a little slow." Myra nodded thoughtfully. "Because the rats aren't as active during the day. Yesterday they were desperate from hunger." "Got any good ideas?" Rhodes asked, shifting his gaze toward her. Myra chuckled, rubbing the soft fur of Worm, who had accompanied them on the journey. "We could use Worm as bait. He is fat and smells nice, very tempting for rats." "Huh?" Worm's tiny horns drooped in alarm, his eyes wide with fear. "Isn't that a bit cruel?" Rhodes said sympathetically. Worm nudged at Rhodes' arm, desperate for protection. But then he heard Rhodes add lightly, "Besides, there's only so much meat on him. He'd be eaten up before attracting enough rats." Worm looked like he wanted to cry. He seriously considered returning to the howling abyss. It was too dangerous to live in this home. Myra, giggling, stroked Worm's head to soothe him, and then offered another suggestion. "How about using Satan's soul?" She meant blasting the area with her demonic transformation's power. "Better not." Rhodes shook his head immediately. "I already warned the village chief there might be some damage, but I don't want to turn their entire farmland into a crater field." Myra pouted slightly, but she understood. "Let's stick with void drubs and do a full sweep." Rhodes decided with a sigh. "As much as I'd love to treat this like a relaxing vacation, the villagers are counting on us. If it weren't for the risk of contaminating farmland with poison, he would have implemented a full-scale biochemical pest control plan by now. Though summoning the void drubs was exhausting, he figured he could manage by resting every couple of hours. The plan was set: unleash the void drubs, and launch a true carpet sweep. And this wasn't just a figure of speech. It was literally a carpet of writhing worms. The void mites, with their flexible, elastic bodies, easily squeezed into almost every mouse hole. The rats here were big, but the void mites were relentless, dragging rats out of their burrows one after another. Of course, not every void mite survived, some were inevitably sacrificed. But in the grand scheme of things, the casualties were minor. "Ugh, I'm so tired," Rhodes said dramatically, without even trying to sound convincing, before collapsing sideways onto Myra. Myra caught him easily, wrapping an arm around him, ruffling his hair fondly with her fingers, then carefully smoothing it back down. Watching the void mites energetically bouncing across the fields while lounging in Myra's arms, Rhodes had a strange thought. The soldiers are dying on the front lines, and the general is lounging in luxury. I might have the makings of a tyrant. After nearly 2 hours of hard work, just as Rhodes was about to call for a break, he noticed something strange. They were vanishing at an alarming rate. Not just the void mites, 2 Krugs had also been wiped out, their rocky bodies smashed apart and forcibly returned to the summoner's rift. Rhodes immediately sat up, his instincts sharp. "Careful," he warned. "There's something powerful underground nearby." Myra's expression turned serious as she scanned the surroundings, ready for anything. A few minutes later, a heavily trafficked rat tunnel suddenly exploded outward, sending dirt flying as several stunned void mites tumbled out of the ground. And then, a towering figure leapt out from the crater, landing heavily with a snarl. It was a rat king, standing upright, nearly twice the height of an average man. Its bloated body rippled with muscle, a thick, whip-like tail lashed behind it, and its 2 yellowed front teeth jutted out over a foot long. Ha-h! The Rat King let out a hoarse, chilling screech. In response, dozens of rats surged from the surrounding tunnels, swarming toward their leader like a tide. There really was a Rat King. Rhodes muttered, more amused than alarmed. Had it shown up any earlier or later, it might have been a headache, but right now, the timing was perfect. "Take it down!" Rhodes shouted. The blue sentinel pounded forward with a thunderous charge, aiming straight for the Rat King. The fearless void mites had already lunged first, blindly following their orders to attack anything resembling a rat. No matter how huge the target was, they didn't hesitate. Under the Rat King's screech, the rat swarm launched their own coordinated counterattack. The battlefield once again erupted into a chaotic melee, although thankfully on a smaller scale than yesterday's massive clash. The blue sentinel raised its massive stone fist and slammed it toward the Rat King. The Rat King reacted swiftly, raising its claws to block. Crack! Stone fragments flew from the sentinel's body. But the Rat King fared even worse, its massive front teeth snapped clean off, flying through the air along with a twist of its crooked jaw. Rhodes shook his head with mock pity. So weak. It's better not to ask Elfman to take it over? Myra gave him a playful smack on the shoulder. How can you still remember that nonsense at a time like this? But even as she spoke, a second monstrous rat appeared, this one just as large as the first. It lunged from another direction, its claw striking a void drub squarely. The void drub was smashed apart instantly, dissolving into magic as it was forcibly unsummoned. The other two void drubs retreated a few steps, firing dark purple magic bullets in rapid bursts to cover their retreat. But this second Rat King was nimble. It zigzagged, evading every shot, then launched itself high into the air, heading straight for Rhodes himself. Another one? And it actually knows basic tactics? Rhodes was a little surprised, but not worried. After all, Myra had already activated Satan's Soul. A massive purple-black magic sphere condensed in her right hand, much larger than the ones she'd used the night before, and she hurled it with all her might. The attack struck the rat's bloated abdomen dead-on, bending its body into a twisted arc midair before it crashed down, engulfed in a violent explosion of magic. Rhodes watched the blast and muttered, "Hope they can still find some pieces of it afterward." Myra turned back to him with a mischievous smile. "So, how's your personal bodyguard?" Rhodes grinned without hesitation. "So cool. So cool." In the glowing light of the explosion behind her, Myra's lipstick gleamed, her face lined with Satan's Soul's crackling magic patterns. Myra laughed and, with a few casual throws, lobbed several more magic bullets into the rat swarm still resisting nearby. After a few quick blasts, she gracefully reverted to her normal form, her sweet smile returning, bright and innocent, as if the fearsome demoness from seconds ago had never existed. The way she switched styles so easily. It was almost criminal. Meanwhile, the first Rat King, battered and broken, could barely even stand against the relentless Blue Sentinel. And the leaderless rats soon fell under the unyielding assault of the endless Void Knights. Victory was firmly in their grasp. Just then, three figures appeared from the direction where Myra's explosion had blown the second Rat King away. One of them knelt beside the smoldering crater and clicked his tongue. "TCH. What a pain. Looks like someone beat us to it." The shortest of the trio asked. "So what do we do now?" The tall, dark-skinned handsome man sighed dramatically. "Ugh, no choice. Guess we have to go greet them. But, I'll say this now, I really don't want to introduce myself unless I absolutely have to." Rhodes squinted and quickly recognized one of them. "That's Hibiki from Blue Pegasus, right? The guy who once uploaded a whole language package directly into his mind." And he vaguely remembered the other two from magazine spreads. "Miss Mara Jane." Hibiki greeted Myra with a dazzling smile. "It's wonderful to see you again. You're even more stunning than last time." The dark-skinned one flicked his hair coolly and muttered. "Name's Ren. And, just so we're clear, you're very beautiful and all, but don't expect me to fall head over heels or anything." "A male son, dear?" Rhodes shivered internally. He wasn't ready for this. Then the shortest member of the trio dropped to one knee dramatically, starry-eyed. "I'm Eve of Blue Pegasus. It's an honor, Miss Mara Jane. May I call you Big Sister?" It seemed like a habit for these Blue Pegasus guys to completely ignore the presence of other men, as they eagerly crowded around Myra. Rhodes, veins practically popping on his forehead, felt like yelling, "Manly." It was only sheer willpower that stopped him from summoning the Rift Herald right then and there to flatten them. But Myra simply smiled and leaned casually against Rhodes, intertwining her fingers with his. "Hello," she said sweetly. "I'm Red Jane from Fairy Tale, and this is my boyfriend, Rhodes." Chapter 281, Kind Rhodes. Does she know exactly what I'm thinking? In that instant, all of Rhodes' irritation vanished like smoke. Who cared about handsome guys? Who cared about Blue Pegasus? His Myra wasn't the type to get flustered by a few pretty faces. What? The trio of Blue Pegasus mages practically screamed in shock. Mara Jane, the top model of Sorcerer Weekly, the newly crowned #1 on the mage you most want as your girlfriend list, had a boyfriend? Among them, Hibiki managed his expression the best, quickly smoothing out the disbelief from his face. "I did hear some rumors a while back," Hibiki said with a charming smile. "But I figured they were just tabloid gossip. Seems I was wrong. My apologies." He could understand it well. After all, being ranked #1 on the mage you most want as your boyfriend list himself, Hibiki knew the headaches that came with fame. Rumors about him dating 18 girls at once were still floating around, after all. But now, looking at Myra, she didn't seem troubled at all. In fact, she looked downright happy to show off her relationship. Hibiki couldn't help but wonder, would Jenny, who just lost the top spot to Myra, be thrilled when she found out about this? Meanwhile, Ren remained his usual cold self, refusing to meet their eyes. "So you already have a boyfriend? TCH, what a shame," he muttered. "But if you ever have relationship troubles, you can still come to me." Not that I'm expecting it or anything. As for Eve, the smallest and most dramatic of the three, he simply clasped his hands together and pleaded, "It's fine. I just want to call you big sister. You're too charming." Rhodes clenched his fists, staring at them. "I really want to beat them up." Myra gave him a sweet smile and said, "You've worked so hard already. Let me handle this one for you." Her tone was gentle, but the moment she turned to face the Pegasus trio, her entire aura shifted. An overwhelming surge of magic erupted from Myra. Her silver hair whipped around her like a storm. The hem of her clothes fluttered wildly. The pressure she released was enough to make the ground seem to tremble. This pressure. It feels just like when Master gets serious. Demon. It's Demon Mara Jane. The three Pegasus mages instinctively backed up several steps, their faces pale. They remembered it now. Mara Jane Strauss hadn't always been the gentle model in magazines. She had once been known across Fiore as a terrifying powerhouse, the demon of fairy tale. There were even rumors that she had lost her magic power after an accident, but seeing her now, that clearly wasn't the case. Model or not, she was still the real deal. Wait. Hibiki stammered, waving his arms frantically. "We're not here to pick a fight. We just came to check on the Rat King. We realized it had already been taken care of." Rhodes wrapped an arm around Myra's shoulders and gently pressed his forehead against hers. All right. Calm down. Your hair's getting messy." He smiled warmly and turned toward the Blue Pegasus trio. In truth, Fairy Tale and Blue Pegasus had a pretty good relationship. Their guild masters, Mikarov and Bob, were old friends. But still. Mers tended to flee from a certain someone at Pegasus, Lokid from everyone at Pegasus, and now, Rhodes was a little disgusted with the trio of Pegasus. There was definitely something off about the relationship between the younger generation of Fairy Tale and Blue Pegasus. If this kind of awkward tension kept up, without any genuine exchange or friendship building, Rhodes thought grimly, there might not be much of a bond left between the two guilds in the future. Myra gave a polite nod, her expression smoothing back to its usual warmth. She asked directly. "So, about the mission?" Rhodes, meanwhile, was still lightly combing her hair with his fingers, and suddenly paused. Something about the flow of events felt strange. Wasn't he the one who got wronged earlier? And then Myra stepped forward, fiercely protecting him and scaring the troublemakers off. And somehow, everything got settled peacefully because he had been kind enough to forgive them. Something about this order felt off. Before Rhodes could dwell on it, Hibiki began explaining. In truth, Hibiki said smoothly, "The commission we received was to hunt down a Rat King and Rat Queen causing trouble near Lakemont. The goal was to prevent the infestation from spreading any further. But when we arrived at Lakemont," Eve continued, looking embarrassed, "we found that both the Rat King and Queen were already gone. Not just that, the rats around the lake had vanished too." Ren folded his arms and finished, "Turns out there had been a flood recently. The lake's water level rose sharply, drowning the rat's nest. All the rats, along with nearby wildlife, had been forced to migrate elsewhere." The three took turns explaining everything clearly. They had tracked the fleeing rats here, only to arrive and find the Rat King already defeated. Or rather, beaten into the dirt by a large stone golem, who had not been told to stop smashing it. As they spoke, Rhodes and Myra exchanged a glance. So that was the truth behind the rat plague in Ravendell village. Lakemont was about 20 kilometers south of here. The rats had simply migrated to the village after losing their original home. And it also explained why two different guilds, Fairy Tale and Blue Pegasus, were dispatched to deal with the same infestation from two ends, without knowing about each other. Myra leaned closer and whispered to Rhodes, "Situations like this happen sometimes. In fact, it wasn't uncommon. Sometimes, different clients would post different requests for the same underlying problem. Other times, different clients would unknowingly assign the same job to separate guilds. When that happened, it often led to competition." Rhodes recalled something. He and Urza had once gotten into a fight with a mage from the Quattro Cerberus over a bounty mission. Competing for a job between guilds was technically allowed. It didn't break the long-standing treaty that prohibited open warfare between guilds. It was perfectly reasonable, and completely legal, for Rhodes and Myra to have beaten the trio up, as long as the three hadn't formally surrendered the mission yet. But unfortunately, Hibiki spoke up decisively, "Since you've already completed the job, we'll have to consider our mission a failure." Rhodes quickly raised his hand to stop them. "Wait, don't be so hasty." He leaned closer to Myra and whispered a few words. Myra nodded, agreeing to his idea with a gentle smile. Rhodes straightened up and said warmly, "Since Mr. Hibiki once helped me out, I'd like to offer a suggestion." "Suggestion?" Hibiki asked, tilting his head curiously. "Why don't we work out an exchange?" "Exchange?" Hibiki raised an eyebrow. "Yes." Rhodes explained. Our real mission isn't just about defeating the Rat King. It's to eliminate the entire rat infestation in Ravendell Village. In other words, Hibiki caught on immediately. You want us to help clear out the remaining rats? Exactly. Rhodes confirmed with a nod. We don't need you to defeat them outright, just locating them, herding them together, or anything that helps. As long as you contribute, we can say the Rat King and Queen were taken down through joint efforts. The truth was, neither Rhodes nor Myra had any magic suited for wide area searches or mass control. Their carpet search strategy was exhausting and inefficient. If Blue Pegasus had magic that could speed up the process, it would be a huge help. And from the way the trio smiled confidently, they clearly had something in mind. The three men struck exaggerated, sparkling poses as they announced dramatically, I am Hibiki, the 100 Knight. I am Ren, the Silent Knight. I am Eve, the Holy Knight. They formed a neat triangle, each gesturing gallantly to the heavens, Germans, moving out. We never let a lady down. Rhodes blinked at the sight. He honestly couldn't appreciate it. He really couldn't. Chapter 282, Calling it a day. I heard Blue Pegasus runs a side business too. Rhodes whispered to Myra, fishing for a little more information. Kind of like how Fairy Tale runs a tavern? Myra nodded thoughtfully. Yes, but theirs is more like a bar or a nightclub, right? She tried to explain it tactfully, not wanting Rhodes to misunderstand too harshly. In addition to the usual kind of service staff, she continued gently, they also have beautiful people like Jenny. They serve drinks, but they also provide some emotional companionship. You know, talking, keeping customers company, making them feel at home. Rhodes processed this slowly, and his expression shifted from curious to a little horrified. Isn't that basically? He trailed off, wisely choosing not to finish the sentence. The way Blue Pegasus operated felt a little too close to something skirting the edge of decency. But no one could deny they made a lot of money. Their guild had strength, fame, good public relations, and unlike Fairy Tale, they didn't cause property damage every other week. It made sense they were loaded with funds. Otherwise, how could they afford those luxurious flying airships and flashy magic equipment? Even though the trio in front of him seemed a bit eccentric, Rhodes had no doubts about their actual skills. After accepting Rhodes' proposal, the Tremens immediately shifted into work mode. Hibiki took the lead. With a flourish of his hand, a glowing golden keyboard and screen appeared midair. His fingers flew across the keys at an incredible speed, summoning up several overlapping maps. After a few quick adjustments, he zoomed in and marked several spots glowing with small red dots. These are the densest rat clusters I've detected. Hibiki said, cool and professional. I'll upload the location data to you too. Ren, take the odd-numbered ones. Eve, the even numbers. Above Ren and Eve's heads, little progress bars appeared, and once they filled, the two saluted smartly and answered together, understood. Without wasting a second, they dashed off like human GPS units. When Ren reached his first point, he pressed his hand to the ground. More than a dozen rats stumbled out of a burrow, gasping, but collapsed just a few steps away. Meanwhile, over on Eve's side, rats scurried from the hole only to be instantly frozen into snowy statues. Neither lingered, they immediately rushed to the next location, operating with seamless precision. Rhodes watched this with wide eyes. Meanwhile, Hibiki, who was now free, strolled over to explain with a relaxed smile, my magic is called Archive. You've seen it before. It lets me gather, compress, and send large amounts of information instantly to my teammates. Ren uses air magic. He continued. He extracts oxygen from a small area, causing the rats to suffocate when they surface. And Eve uses snow magic. He lowers the temperature inside the burrows, forcing the rats out, then freezes them solid. Myra clasped her hands together unpraised. What incredible teamwork. Hibiki beamed. Of course. We're the top team in Blue Pegasus. He puffed out his chest proudly. If Ikaya were here too, it would be truly perfect. Rhodes, meanwhile, couldn't help but be a little suspicious. The way these guys received data from Hibiki looked so easy, but when he had gotten a language pack jammed into his brain back during their last encounter, it had been agony. Maybe it was because the amount of data Hibiki sent to him was way too much? Come to think of it, could Hibiki's magic theoretically stuff so much useless information into a mouse's brain that it would swell up and explode? Rhodes suddenly felt that this kind of magic was terrifying. Maybe it only worked if the recipient consented first? Otherwise, it would be way too broken. Beyond Hibiki's archive magic, the one that made Rhodes feel most uneasy was Ren's air magic. It's too unfair. Rhodes grumbled. He just drains the oxygen? If we ever fought him, we'd suffocate without even knowing it. There must be some restrictions. Myra reasoned calmly. Like casting range, the time it takes to take effect. Something like that. she added with a smile. And even if there aren't, just defeat him before you run out of breath. Rhodes gestured dramatically with 2 fingers, or make your own air. Watching them, Hibiki broke into a cold sweat. Why are they discussing how to counter us so seriously? And scarily enough, they were right. Meanwhile, Ren and Eve were clearing out the last of the rats with frightening efficiency. Their teamwork and skill were impeccable. When Rhodes had rested enough, thanks to the Blue Sentinel's buff restoring his mana, he asked Hibiki for a copy of the rat map and jumped back into the fight to speed things up. Together, the group worked through the entire day. By sunset, the fields were littered with rat corpses. It was an exhausting, dirty job, but not one of them complained. Despite how flashy and eccentric the Drummons looked at first glance, Rhodes had to admit, they had real skill, and real work ethic. He might not know what they were like off the clock, but today, they had earned his respect as true wizards. As evening fell and the sky turned orange, Rhodes summoned Bramble back with a snap of his fingers. The hulking tree beast wove several thick vines into makeshift chairs, letting everyone sit and rest. The group collapsed into the seats, wiping sweat from their brows and letting out long, satisfied sighs. You seem to know a lot of convenient magic, Hibiki remarked, fanning himself with a small spell circle. Rhodes lazily laid his head across Myra's lap and replied without thinking. Magic should serve life. And change life. Where had he even heard that before? Myra giggled and took the chance to gently ruffle his hair, smoothing down the parts that had gotten messy during the day's battle. That mana-restoring magic of yours is amazing. Eve chimed in admiringly. If you were a girl, I'd totally fall for you. Rhodes raised an eyebrow but didn't bother responding. Instead, he pointed at Eve and said with a smirk. Make sure you visit our guild someday. I'll introduce you to Myra's brother. He was already picturing Elfman's iron grip crushing this flirt's shoulder. Meanwhile, Ren, still keeping up his tsundere persona, crossed his arms and muttered, I also think your magic is impressive. Not that I'm actually complimenting you or anything. Thanks. Rhodes realized that, once you got used to him, the dark-skinned guy, Ren was actually the easiest of the 3 to get along with. The group chatted for a while longer, and the atmosphere stayed relaxed and friendly, at least as long as the Drummons didn't start flirting with Myra again. At one point, Hibiki summoned his shimmering electronic map once more. He spun his screen toward Rhodes and Myra and said, while we haven't wiped them all out, the large rats are basically eradicated. The few left scattered around won't affect the villagers' lives anymore. So, shall we call the mission complete? Rhodes reached out his hand. Happy to work together. Hibiki smiled and shook his hand firmly. Happy to work together. Then, with a glint of nostalgia in his eyes, Hibiki added, I still can't believe it. Just a year ago, you couldn't even speak the common language properly, and now, you're already such a capable wizard. Rhodes grinned. Good thing you remember me. I thought you were completely disinterested in guys. Hibiki placed a hand dramatically over his nose and replied coolly, maybe it's just part of my charming personality. After that, the trio from Blue Pegasus waved goodbye and set off, leaving Rhodes and Myra alone again as they began making their way back to the village. Rhodes stretched lazily and sighed. Even though they're ridiculously handsome, they're actually good guys. Myra glanced over at him, a playful smile tugging at her lips. Did Mr. Hibiki mess up your grammar again somehow? That transition sounded weird. Rhodes blinked. What? How should I have said it, then? Myra leaned in slightly, her eyes sparkling mischievously. You should say. Although they're not as handsome as me, they're still good people. She gave him an exaggerated, innocent blink. Rhodes stared at her for a moment, then chuckled lowly. Do you realize there are consequences for sweet-talking someone like that? Chapter 283, Small Things. Something wonderful had happened. Even now, Myra was still clinging tightly to Rhodes' arm, the faint blush on her face slowly fading. Her mood was clearly soaring. She nestled closer, practically pressing against him. Compared to last time, the two of them were more in sync now, more natural, and yet, Myra still felt her heart flutter uncontrollably. Humphrey. So what consequences? That was just an excuse to take advantage. No. I'm the one taking advantage here. She peeked up at Rhodes. Judging by the happiness radiating from his face, he clearly felt the same. If both sides were happy, then it wasn't taking advantage at all. Besides, seeing Rhodes get adorably jealous earlier had made Myra like him even more. Meanwhile, Rhodes was savoring his own bliss. He could clearly feel the soft warmth pressed against his arm. It puzzled him a little. Myra had been so shy about hand-holding before, but now she didn't seem to mind much more intimate contact. Still, he wasn't about to complain. It felt amazing. Suddenly, Rhodes pulled his arm free, took 2 quick steps ahead, turned around, and blocked Myra's path. She bumped straight into his chest. Before she could react, He scooped her into a tight hug. Myra looked up at him, surprised. "What's gotten into you?" she asked, blinking. Rhodes leaned down and kissed her gently on the forehead. "Nothing. I just wanted to hug you again." He thought about telling her how happy it made him when she introduced him so proudly earlier as her boyfriend, but it felt a little too embarrassing to say aloud. Some things were better simply felt. Later, back at the village, Rhodes and Myra met with Jasper again. "The rat plague is basically cleared out," Rhodes reported. "There are still dead rats everywhere in the fields, though. Make sure to organize a cleanup crew first thing tomorrow. And just to be safe," Myra added with a bright smile, "we'll stay for another day to monitor things. We'll only leave once we're sure the village is fully secure." Rhodes had suggested it earlier, and Myra agreed wholeheartedly. He also planned to send out the Merc Wolves and Krugs one last time, just to be thorough. Jasper bowed deeply, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you, truly. You've saved our whole village." Myra simply smiled. This is the job of a wizard. Helping ordinary people in exchange for rewards. This was the foundation that had formed naturally over the 100-year history of magic guilds. It was a mutually supportive relationship. People entrusted wizards with their troubles, wizards lent their strength, and both sides made each other's lives better. That mutual trust was the cornerstone of the guild system. After Rhodes and Myra retired to their room for a well-deserved rest, Jasper's wife sat down beside him at the table. She spoke hesitantly. "Dear, do you think we're paying them too little? I've been asking around," she added. "Those two are famous. They appear in Sorcerer Weekly all the time." Jasper sighed heavily. "I know. Just the aura of their magic alone tells you they're not ordinary wizards." He paused, then shook his head. "But the payment was agreed on before. And, well, you know the state the village is in. We can't exactly offer more right now." His wife frowned thoughtfully. "Even if we can't pay more, we should still find a way to show our gratitude. Thanks to all that ash from the burned rats, we'll save a lot on fertilizer costs this year." Jasper muttered. "I'll think of something." "What exactly are you trying to do?" Myra asked suspiciously. "Help you scrub your back," Rhodes said seriously. Myra was standing in the bathroom, while Rhodes lingered just outside, the bathroom door half open and half closed between them. Facing Rhodes' shameless enthusiasm, Myra gave him a professional-grade fake smile. "No need," she said sweetly. Rhodes, however, wasn't so easily discouraged. He quickly stretched out a hand to block the door from closing and put on a pitiful look. "Listen, Myra. Trust between people is very important, especially between lovers. With trust, there's less suspicion, less misunderstanding. We can communicate more openly, build a deeper and more stable relationship." Myra stared at him, amused despite herself, though her expression stayed calm. "Get to the point," she said flatly. "The point is," Rhodes said earnestly, "even if you don't want to take a bath with me, you should at least invite me. Let me feel your trust. I can refuse, but you should offer." "Oh?" Myra's eyes glinted with mischief. "Then tell me, Rhodes. Would you like to take a bath with me?" Rhodes' hands rubbed together eagerly, his smile spreading out like ripples across a pond. It would be rude to refuse such a kind invitation. Bang! The bathroom door slammed shut with a thud, missing Rhodes' nose by a hair's breadth. Rhodes stood there blinking at the closed door, sighing dramatically. As expected, he still wasn't getting in. If Myra were as thick-skinned about these things as Versa. Rhodes shuddered at the thought. Nope. Better not imagine that. Things were good the way they were. Deciding to behave for once, he chose not to summon Worm for company tonight. Instead, he sat down and entered a quiet meditation while Myra bathed. His mind wandered to the yellow markings he'd seen earlier at the dragon pit. If he remembered right, it was the symbol of the mountain dragon. If he could just accumulate a little more magic power, he'd soon be able to attempt summoning it. But summoning something that big definitely couldn't happen inside a town. No way. Still, thinking about it stirred a small excitement in him. Time in meditation always passed quickly. Soon enough, Myra emerged, her long hair freshly washed and cascading down her shoulders. Rhodes took the hairdryer and naturally took over the task of drying Myra's hair. This time, he was much more practiced. He gently and steadily dried her hair, his movements smooth and careful. When he finished, Rhodes lightly ran his fingers through her soft, snowy white strands and sighed contentedly. "I think we got the order wrong," he said with a smile. "Next time, I should wash first, and then I can help you from the very beginning." Myra, meeting his eyes in the mirror, smiled with the gentlest look imaginable. "Okay," she said warmly. She really wouldn't mind if life stayed like this forever. "It's your turn," Myra said, standing up and motioning for Rhodes to sit down. She tilted her head in thought. "Looks like I should blow dry your hair first too." Maybe. Rhodes agreed, chuckling. Though I think you might find it uncomfortable. It's not that bad, Myra said, smiling. The two of them kept chatting about the order of who should bathe in dry hair first, so seriously and sincerely that it took a while before they both realized how trivial it actually was. They looked at each other and laughed softly. But neither of them minded. Because this was exactly the kind of future they were imagining, living together, thinking about even the smallest things, sharing each day. After lingering together for a long while, they finally got ready for bed. Where's Warm? Myra asked, looking around. Rhodes, lying through his teeth without even blinking, answered, it got scared today and decided not to come until we return to the guild. Just sleep like this, I promise I won't do anything. Myra gave him a suspicious side glance. The trust between people is gone, she said flatly. She didn't believe a word of it. Rhodes had a habit, he always liked hugging something when he slept. She looked around and finally pulled her suitcase closer to use it as a wall between them. Don't use that thing. Rhodes protested immediately. It's too hard. I'll call Warm back instead. He really didn't want to wake up with bruises from colliding with a heavy suitcase in the middle of the night. Humphrey, Myra snorted. Didn't you say it was scared? It's fine now, Rhodes said shamelessly. Soon after, the fluffy high wall known as Warm materialized between them. Rhodes laid down comfortably. Myra reached out toward him again across Warm. Rhodes caught her hand gently and brought it to his lips. Don't use that sleep magic again, he said softly. Just a goodnight kiss is enough. Okay, Myra answered with a sweet smile. She brushed her hair to one side, leaned over Warm, and pressed a soft kiss to his forehead. After Myra lay back down, Rhodes stared at the ceiling, feeling something gnawing at him. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore. He sat up, leaned over Warm's soft, squishy body, and tilted down toward Myra, and kissed her tenderly on the lips. Chapter 284, The Water Monster Returns Home. Rhodes and Myra kept their word, staying an extra day in Ravendell Village. On one hand, it was to make sure there were no unexpected problems. On the other, they managed to catch a few more straggling rats. They barely caught 20 rats the entire day, and none of them were anywhere near the size of the ones they'd fought before, which proved the infestation had truly been dealt with. As long as the villagers took a few basic precautions, they wouldn't have to worry about another outbreak. The two had left the guild on the 1st, and by the morning of the 4th, they were finally ready to set off again. Village Chief Jasper came personally to see them off, carrying their payment, while many villagers paused their work to gather and wave goodbye. But when Rhodes took the bag, he noticed something was off. Why does it feel heavier? We added a little more, Jasper admitted. You both saved the entire village. And after learning about the Rat King and Queen, we realized the original reward didn't match the difficulty of the job. We collected an additional 500,000 jewels. It's not much compared to what you deserve, but... No, Village Chief. Myra interrupted firmly, her tone polite but unyielding. The reward was agreed upon before we accepted the mission. We can't take anything extra. But I'm the client. I have the right to increase the reward afterward, right? This is our village's gratitude. That's different, Myra said with a gentle but firm smile. Changing the payment afterward would hurt our guild's reputation. Fairy Tale is strict about mission agreements. Rhodes pulled out exactly jewels and pressed the rest back into Jasper's hands. This is enough. Thank you for your kindness. Until we meet again. The two waved goodbye and rode away atop the crab. Village Chief, what should we do with the extra money? A villager asked quietly. We'll return it to everyone, Jasper said after a moment of thought. But we'll find another way to show our gratitude. On the road, Myra quickly noticed their direction. This isn't the way back to the guild. Rhodes grinned. Nope. It's toward Lake Mint. That's the lake where the rats originally came from, right? Exactly. I want to see it for myself. And it feels like a waste to head straight home after coming all this way, don't you think? Myra smiled brightly. That's true. Originally, the two had planned a small getaway together, time off from the guild. But between rushing to the village and battling rats, it had felt more like work than vacation. Spending a few more days sightseeing together sounded perfect. Anyway, the guild was in good hands with the master and Drizza around. Nothing major would happen. A few peaceful days flew by. They traveled to a town famous for its textiles, where Myra happily browsed for new summer clothes for Elfman. Meanwhile, Rhodes casually bought a magazine at a newsstand, and after flipping through a few pages, realized their trip might have to end earlier than expected. Rhodes sighed. Is Ritas really that good at causing trouble? Ritas? Myra blinked in surprise. What happened? He passed her the magazine. Apparently, because there haven't been any new models of magic light pens released lately, Ritas organized a protest with some artist friends. "And?" Myra asked, her tone already laced with amusement. "Well, he was worried they wouldn't get enough attention. So he used magic to summon a crowd. Which caused a traffic jam." Rhodes pointed to a photo showing Regis with his head bowed apologetically. "Ahaha." Myra couldn't hold back her laughter. "So? Did it work? Did the manufacturer agree to release new models? Shouldn't you be more concerned about whether he's okay first?" Rhodes said, deadpan. Myra twirled a lock of hair around her finger and tilted her head playfully. "I think Regis would probably care more about the pens." "Okay." Rhodes ruffled her hair, smiling. "You're too cute, you have the final say." The manufacturer only gave them a perfunctory response. Rhodes added. Myra chuckled. "I figured as much. Maybe next time, we should call everyone in the guild to go protest with Regis too?" Rhodes lightly tapped her head. "Don't joke like that. If you really did that, Master Makarov would cry." Myra didn't bat away his hand this time. Instead, she pointed to another photo in the magazine. "Is that Warren's back?" "Yeah. Looks like Warren caused a little stir during a mission. Some kind of magic mishap." Myra tilted her head thoughtfully. "He must have climbed somewhere high again, right?" "Exactly." Rhodes sighed. "The higher the better, apparently." He flipped the page and muttered bitterly. "And here's the really interesting part. The demon Myjane returns? A water monster defeated at Lake Mint." Because there was no photo attached to the article, Myra didn't catch on immediately. "Water monster?" Rhodes covered his face. "That's me. A few days ago, when they were training by Lake Mint, someone must have spotted them from afar. Later, when a reporter interviewed the Blue Pegasus trio, they casually mentioned Myra had been there too, giving the rumor all the confirmation it needed." Myra burst into laughter, clinging to her stomach. "Ha ha ha." The last time the two had been in the news together, Rhodes had only been rumored to be Myra's boyfriend. But this time, he had been officially mistaken for a lake monster. Rhodes bared his teeth and growled playfully. "Laugh again, and the terrible water monster will take you away." Myra simply extended her hand with a bright smile. "Please do, Mr. Water Monster." Rhodes grinned and pulled her close. "Then I'll take you somewhere truly terrifying." "Fairy tale." "How frightening." Myra played along, feigning fear. "But, Mr. Water Monster, could you maybe let me finish shopping first?" "Fine, fine." Rhodes relented. What followed was a private fashion show just for him. Myra made him sit and patiently watch as she tried on outfit after outfit, more than a dozen sets in total. After selecting a few of their favorites, the two finally packed up their purchases and hurried back toward Magnolia. Although they had wanted to spend a few more days together traveling, they couldn't help but worry about the guild. By evening, Fairy Tale was usually at its liveliest. But today, the guild felt strangely subdued. Part of it was due to the stern knight currently manning the front desk. The other part was because, frankly, there had been way too many problems recently. Not just the ones that had made it into Sorcerer Weekly, no, there were plenty more incidents that had been quietly swept under the rug. Loke had gotten tangled up with a few troublesome women again. Natsu had, naturally, caused havoc yesterday. And even Alzik and Biscal had racked up some complaints during a mission gone sideways. All these problem children had been personally dealt with by Ursa that very afternoon. After facing her wrath, none of them dared to make a scene tonight. Without those usual noisy suspects around, the guild naturally felt much quieter. Still, Ursa filling in for Myra at the front counter had its own benefits. For one, when working behind the bar, she was dressed in her usual armor. But when serving food and drinks to the tables, she would actually change into a waitress uniform, the same one she had earned while part-timing at a dessert shop last year. Granted, it was a bit tighter this year, but still perfectly wearable. To match the uniform, she'd even styled her hair into twin ponytails. Whatever criticisms people might have had about the service quality, there was no denying, Ursa was an absolute feast for the eyes. Even seasoned veterans like Mikau and Wakabe couldn't help sneaking glances, hearts pounding like teenagers. Myra had a boyfriend now, so openly teasing her was off limits. But Ursa was still single. Not that anyone dared flirt with her, they valued their lives too much, but at least they could indulge in wishful thinking. The door to the guild swung open with a creak. Ursa immediately perked up and greeted warmly. "Welcome." Two figures, dressed in matching casual outfits, stepped inside. Seeing Ursa's appearance, they nearly stumbled in surprise. "Ursa? Myra? Rhodes?" Recognizing them, Ursa smiled brightly. "Welcome back." Myra and Rhodes exchanged a chuckle. "We're back." For a moment, Myra felt a wave of nostalgia wash over her. For more than a year now, she had always been the one welcoming people home at the guild. Today, because of someone special, she was the one being welcomed back. It felt nice. The entire guild fell into a brief stunned silence. And then, like a dam breaking, a loud and joyous cheer erupted. Myra Rhodes. Welcome back. Chapter 285, Mirza Argument. Myra Rhodes. You're finally back. Makarov was so excited he leapt straight from the second floor. He was so fired up that he didn't even land properly. He went face first into the ground. Then again, he was one of the 10 wizard saints. At 88 years old, falling 2 stories only made his face turn a little red. In true Makarov fashion, he bounced up like nothing had happened and immediately tried to cling to Rhodes' thigh, ready to sob. If he hugged Myra instead, he'd probably be kicked across the room. Makarov sometimes fantasized about having a newcomer join the guild who was beautiful, had a good figure, a sweet personality, and wasn't ready to kick him into next week. Master, it's not like we've been gone that long. Just a few days, right? Rhodes said, awkwardly patting the old man's back, still not quite used to dealing with Makarov as casually as Myra and Natsa did. It felt like a century. Makarov wailed. Do you know what I've been through while you were gone? Mirza kept forcing me to actually work as guild master. She wouldn't even let me drink unless I finished my paperwork. Rhodes tilted his head thoughtfully. Isn't that a good thing? Didn't Myra often restrict your drinking too? It's not the same. Makarov cried dramatically. When Myra restricts me, I can at least sneak a drink. But Mirza draws her sword the moment I so much as touch a bottle. Oh. Rhodes nodded seriously. Good thing to note, when Myra forbids drinking, it's under the table. When Mirza forbids drinking, it's under threat of decapitation. And that's not all. Makarov sniffled. She even graded my self-criticism reports. If there was even one typo, she made me rewrite the whole thing, saying my attitude wasn't sincere enough. Rhodes gave a small wince of sympathy. Yeah. That's a bit much. Self-criticisms are just to satisfy the council, not an entrance exam for a magic academy. Exactly. Makarov's eyes lit up, like he had finally found someone who understood his pain. One complaint after another poured out as Makarov tearfully listed everything Mirza had oppressed him with over the past few days. In truth, if this had been any other guild, Mirza's actions would have been considered perfectly normal, maybe even a bit lenient. The problem was, this was fairy tale. Here, normal behavior felt like being subjected to cruel and unusual punishment. Rhodes now fully understood why the entire guild had cheered so loudly when he and Myra walked back in. Everyone had been praying for Myra's return so Mirza would finally step down from her substitute duties. Meanwhile, the tyrant herself was chatting calmly with Myra by the bar. I think you look really good in that uniform, Mirza. Myra said with a smile. Mirza's cheeks tinted pink. Really? I stayed in it because I liked it too. It suits you. But why the sudden decision to be a waitress? Myra asked curiously. Because you and Rhodes asked me to help with guild management. Mirza said, solemn as ever. And being a waitress is part of managing the guild's daily life. Myra blinked, then chuckled softly. You really don't have to take it that seriously. No. I gave my word to help, and I must fulfill all my duties properly. Mirza's voice was firm with her usual unshakable sense of honor. Myra thought for a moment, then a mischievous idea sparkled in her eyes. In that case, she said sweetly, I happen to have another part of my job you could help with. Really? What is it? Mirza asked, curious. Modeling. Myra said brightly. Actually, the magazine sent a letter a few days ago inviting me to shoot a swimsuit feature for the July issue. Swimsuit feature. Mirza repeated slowly. Myra nodded. But lately, I've been thinking of turning down those kinds of offers. Still, it'd be rude to refuse outright. So, Myra smiled slyly. Maybe I could introduce them to you instead? Is that really alright? Mirza was genuinely a little interested in the idea, though she hadn't exactly volunteered for it. In fact, the magazine had probably never dared to approach the Titania of fairy tale directly. After all, Mirza was the fairy queen, who would casually invite her to a swimsuit shoot. Myra's plan had succeeded perfectly. She smiled sweetly and said, of course. I'm really looking forward to seeing Mirza's swimsuit photo. Rhodes wasn't paying full attention to the conversation at first, until he caught Myra's expression out of the corner of his eye. That mischievous smile. The one that meant she was definitely plotting something. He didn't even need to hear the details. He just knew. Rhodes sighed internally. Oh well. As long as Myra wasn't plotting against him again, it should be fine. From Makarov's tearful complaints and Mirza's serious debriefing, Rhodes and Myra quickly got a clear understanding of the guild's current situation. To be honest, Mirza's management ability was impeccable. All the accounts were neat. The mission records were detailed and spotless. No tasks had been mishandled. It was just her personality was a bit too serious. Whether it was official guild matters or minor daily affairs, Mirza tackled everything like she was preparing for war. By comparison, Myra's style was much more relaxed. She mostly let everyone run wild, watched the chaos with amusement, and sometimes even fueled it herself if it meant more fun. In a way, Mirza was like a strict father, while Myra was like a kind and indulgent mother. Judging from the guild members' reactions, it was obvious. Everyone was praying that the strict father would hurry back to work outside, and that the kind mother would stay home and spoil them. Myra and Mirza agreed to contact the magazine editor the next day, and Mirza immediately began preparing to hand the guild's responsibilities back over. Meanwhile, Rhodes flipped through the mission records from the past few days, just to see for himself how things had been going. And honestly, he was surprised. Listening to the president and Mirza earlier, it sounded like complete chaos had broken out. But looking at the mission outcomes? Not a single mission had failed. For example, Locke had successfully completed an escort mission for a famous female artist. Along the way, he even heroically stopped a group of creeps from harassing her. Though admittedly, he personally roughed them up a little too much. Still, mission accomplished. And he somehow managed to charm the granddaughter of a councilman in the process. And then there was Natsu. During a job to subdue the Devon bandit clan, Natsu had absolutely flattened the enemy. Captured every single one of them. Unfortunately, he also flattened 3 houses and a historic clock tower in the process. Rhodes stared at the record, horrified. Would the payment for this job even be enough to cover the damages? Myra, sitting beside him, chuckled lightly. Actually, I think Natsu did restrain himself this time. Back in the day, he would have burned down the whole street. Mirza wore a heavy expression, her voice filled with guilt. So, you're saying Natsu didn't even give it his all during that mission? I specifically told him to go all out when working. Rhodes stared at her, baffled by the logic. He finally grasped the bizarre brain circuits running between these two. Forget it. At least Myra was still normal. He might as well save his breath and just complain directly. So you're the real culprit then? Mirza immediately countered, serious as ever. No, Rhodes, I think the problem lies with you. Huh? Rhodes blinked in confusion. I've been away for the past few days. How could it be my fault? Mirza crossed her arms and said solemnly, this has been going on for quite a while. She thought back carefully before explaining. It all started when you began assisting Myra with the mission desk. You gradually got into the habit of helping everyone analyze their assignments, suggesting where to start, warning them about terrain risks, telling them how to avoid collateral damage, advising on how to fight more safely. Isn't that a good thing? Rhodes asked, completely puzzled. I just want everyone's jobs to go smoother. Fewer injuries, fewer unnecessary accidents. What's wrong with that? Mirza nodded slightly but continued, of course, from the results, it is a good thing. But the problem is, it's something they should learn to think through on their own. When we take on a mission, we should fully assess it ourselves, fight with everything we have, and complete it through our own judgment. That's what I mean when I say going all out. By guiding them step by step, even if it's for their safety, you're encouraging them to stop thinking for themselves. Over time, they'll start to think, just to do what Rhodes says. And while that might reduce accidents short-term, in the long run, it weakens their growth. Rhodes frowned deeply. He hadn't intended anything like that. He never once thought about controlling anyone or stifling their progress. He just wanted them to come home safely. He hadn't expected Rizza to accuse him from this angle. But thinking about it seriously, she wasn't wrong either. It wasn't about good or bad intentions, it was a difference in perspective. Was Natsu already being influenced by him without realizing it? And if Natsu was affected, what about the others? Chapter 286, Rizza, let's fight when you have time. Rhodes shook his head firmly. No. I don't think I did anything wrong. Growth is important, but only if you live long enough to grow. His voice grew quieter but steadier. What I'm trying to do is help everyone avoid unnecessary dangers, to buy them more time, more chances to get stronger. At this point, Rhodes could no longer cling to any naive thoughts like, we're all together, just having fun and adventuring. These guildmates, his friends, his family, weren't just names or faces. They were people who laughed with him, fought beside him, shared drinks, cheered, cried. He didn't want to ever stand at someone's grave, regretting, if only I had warned them a little more. He wouldn't risk that. Mirza crossed her arms, unyielding. That's supposed to be the responsibility of every independent wizard. And Myra, why didn't you stop him from doing this sooner? She thought that if she couldn't persuade Rhodes, maybe Myra could. But Myra's response was gentle, and very different from Rizza's expectation. There's no need to stop him. Myra said softly, smiling. I think Rhodes is doing the right thing. Because the most important thing is that everyone comes back safely, right? Strictly speaking, Her view wasn't exactly the same as Rhodes. To Myra, it wasn't about growth versus safety. If given the choice, she'd choose safety every time. She and Elfman had grown, become stronger, tougher, wiser. But if she could trade all that back just to avoid the pain they had suffered, she would in a heartbeat. Mirza frowned, conflicted. That's true, but... Myra turned and smiled toward Makarov, who had been quietly listening the whole time. Master, what do you think? Makarov chuckled, stroking his short beard. I think it doesn't really matter. He gave a carefree shrug. After all, Rhodes's efforts haven't exactly reduced the number of self-reflection reports I have to file to the council. Rhodes stared at him, exasperated. Your standards are seriously weird, Master. Makarov laughed heartily. What I'm saying is, even though Rhodes gives all kinds of advice, in the end, everyone still does whatever they want. He waved a hand at the lively guild hall, full of noise and chaos despite everything. Whether they fully follow Rhodes's advice, think for themselves, or half listen and half forget, that's their choice. This guild is full of idiots who are stubborn to the core. No matter how hard Rhodes tries to steer them, he can't turn them into little copies of himself. Makarov laughed even louder, full of warmth. He pointed toward the tavern where Kana was downing drinks, Natsu was wrestling Gray under a table, and Happy was stealing fish from the kitchen. Just like Ursa, no matter how much you discipline them, scold them, or train them, they'll still be the same wild bunch the moment you turn around. Ursa furrowed her brows. Then, you're saying both of us are wrong? Makarov shook his head with a fond smile. No, neither of you are wrong. Rhodes, you're right to want to protect them. Ursa, you're right to push them to grow stronger. And Myra, you're right to want to shield the people you love. He leaned back, looking proud. All you're doing is caring about your family in your own ways. And they trust you because of it. Makarov felt a deep, quiet pride as he watched them. The children had grown. They had their own beliefs now, beliefs they were willing to defend, even against Ursa. It filled Makarov's heart with both relief and joy. Especially Rhodes. He wasn't just the smart kid who quietly blended into the guild anymore. He stood tall, voiced his ideas clearly, and fought for what he believed in. If they had actually started brawling just now, well, that would have been even more like fairy tale. After all, the style of a guild always reflected its master. The fairy tale Makarov led had its share of chaos and heart. If Ursa ever led, it might be stricter, more honorable. If Rhodes led, it might be steadier, safer, cleverer. Different leaders. Different dreams. But either way, Makarov realized, fairy tale would be in good hands. Unknowingly, these kids had grown strong enough to shoulder the future. Maybe one day soon, he could finally step down and let them fight it out. Whoever won would be the next guild master. Wait, no, that's too violent. Whoever won would inherit the guild. Makarov smiled fondly. Although we're all companions, he said warmly, raising his mug. We each have our own ideas. We debate, we clash, and yes, sometimes we even fight. But through that, we came to understand each other, and move forward together. That is fairy tale. So go on. Speak your minds. Mirza smiled back at him, her usual seriousness softening. In that case, she said sweetly, a dangerous glint in her eye, Rhodes, it's been a long time since we sparred, hasn't it? Rhodes blinked. Technically, they'd only fought once before. And that fight had been more of a one-shot defeat. Still, he nodded calmly. Yeah. And I just happen to have a new move I've been dying to try out. If you're free in a few days, let's have a match. Whoosh. Ag. Rhodes barely caught a flying bottle out of pure reflex, but the master wasn't so lucky. A bar stool came sailing through the air and flattened Makarov against the counter. Myra stood sweetly behind Rhodes, hands folded in front of her, voice as gentle as spring rain. Oh no, master. Are you alright? Makarov sprang up, face red, yelling, what the hell are you kids doing? Myra only smiled angelically. They're just communicating and understanding each other, master. Mirza nodded solemnly, as if she were discussing sacred guild doctrine. I understand now. That's exactly what you meant. That's not what I meant. Makarov wailed, tears flying everywhere. He tried to order Mirza to get things under control, but Mirza was already too caught up in the lesson. Rhodes casually hugged the mischievous Myra to his side and chuckled, come on now, the master's getting old. Let's show a little mercy. Myra stuck out the tip of her tongue playfully. Tee-hee, the entire guild burst into warm applause as Rhodes and Myra returned. The hall filled once more with familiar noise, laughter, magic sparks, and the occasional small explosion. Even though Mirza still stayed near the counter, the heavy sense of pressure she had once given off had lightened considerably. They were finally back. Myra. Rhodes. This job here. Natsu and Happy bounded up, shoving a mission form into their hands. Arrest the thieves rampaging between Phrygia and Rubinas. Myra read aloud, smiling. Thieves again? Are you planning to level 2 towns at once this time, Natsu? Natsu puffed up indignantly. It's not destruction. It's mission work. This time we're gonna do it right, I swear. Rhodes asked curiously. Didn't you two just turn 2 million jewel recently? You're taking on another job already? Natsu and I are saving up to build a little treasure stash. Happy explained, fluttering around. But we barely made anything from the last mission. Rather than saying barely made anything, it would be more accurate to say it's a miracle we made anything at all. Rhodes thought to himself. After all, considering they wrecked several houses and even demolished a clock tower, the fact they had anything left after paying for the damages was impressive enough. Happy. The treasure stash was supposed to be a secret. Natsu barked, flailing. I let it slip. Happy squeaked, quickly covering his mouth, then pointed accusingly. But Natsu, you said it even louder, so everyone heard anyway. Oh no. Natsu clutched his head, looking like his world had ended. Rhodes couldn't help but wonder why Natsu could be so sharp sometimes. And so utterly hopeless at others. While Rhodes and Natsu started talking over the mission details, Happy turned his attention to far more important matters, food. Myra. Happy tugged at her sleeve. The water monster you caught in the lake, was it a fish monster? Was it tasty? Myra covered her mouth to hide a giggle. That water monster was actually Rhodes. Huh? Happy froze in midair, stunned. Whether he is delicious or not, you have to judge for yourself. A few seconds later, he clambered onto Rhodes' shoulder, poking and prodding him seriously, as if trying to judge whether Rhodes might actually be tasty. Chapter 287, I hope everyone is okay. Rhodes picked Happy off his shoulder and yelled into his ear. This is the new outfit Myra gave me. Happy fluttered like a flag in the wind, apologizing incoherently. Sorry ha. Happy was flattened by Rhodes, but Natsu didn't even try to help, he just burst into carefree laughter. It was pure bliss for him to see two of his closest troublemakers struggling together. Meanwhile, Myra wasn't the least bit angry. She smiled secretly as she watched Happy being punished. In the end, Rhodes couldn't bring himself to really hurt Happy. After giving him a good scolding and a few light thumps, he tossed him back to Natsu. Take him and scram. Myra, my clothes are ruined. Rhodes tried to throw himself pitifully into Myra's arms to cry. Unfortunately, they were still in the guild, and he had to watch his image a little. It's fine. Myra reassured him sweetly. It's just a little Happy drool. Maybe you'll smell a little fishy. Rhodes didn't mind at first, but now he suddenly felt gross. I'm changing. She definitely did that on purpose. By the way, there's something important too. What is it? I've been away so long, my place was not cleaned. It'll take forever to clean, and I won't be able to rest properly. Rhodes put on his most sincere expression. So, is it okay if I stay at your place for a while? Myra wrinkled her nose at his obvious excuse. I can approve you to leave work early. That's so considerate. But I can't dump all my work on you. Then you stay at the guild, and I'll help clean your house. How about a compromise? We clean it up together. Humphrey. Myra gave a soft laugh but didn't refuse. That night, after finishing his daily meditation and practice, Rhodes lay on his bed thinking about how to push their relationship even further. Even though it was bound to happen eventually, how could he not be impatient at a time like this? The next morning, Myra really went out with Ursa, one smiling sweetly, the other full of grim determination. Everyone in the guild noticed and started whispering. Before long, they all came to Rhodes, curiosity burning in their eyes. And so, they learned the bombshell news. Ursa was going to do a photo shoot. What? Seriously? With Myra? What issue is it going to be? If it's for July. That's the second. Mikao and Wakaba grinned at each other knowingly. We have to buy that issue. Wakaba, you're fine, but Mikao, don't you have a girlfriend? Rhodes delivered 2 drinks to their table and raised an eyebrow. What does that have to do with buying magazines? Mikao shot back. Did you stop looking at models in magazines after getting a girlfriend? Excellent point. Rhodes gave him a thumbs up, smirking. Which reminds me, should I introduce you to my girlfriend? Bastard. Get out to here. Scumbag. They cursed him together, only to remember, Rhodes' girlfriend was Fiore's #1 model, Myra Jane Strauss. And not only had Myra not lost her popularity after cutting back on photo shoots, she'd become even more famous. Mikao and Wakaba scowled as Rhodes walked away with a triumphant wave. Mikao turned to Wakaba and slapped him on the back. Think positive, Wakaba. Rhodes might want to look at the magazine, but Myra would clobber him if he tried. You're right. Wakaba nodded furiously, but immediately shoved Mikkel away. Still, you're a traitor. You just started dating a younger woman yourself. Don't talk to me. What did you say? You were the one who came here first today. In fairy tale, you didn't need a big reason to fight, just disagree a little, and fists would start flying. After being held back for days under Riz's strict reign, everyone was itching for a good brawl. They didn't need an excuse, they just needed a spark. One by one, more guildmates found random reasons to jump into the chaos, and soon the guild was in complete uproar again. Rhodes, over here. Canna called out. Today, surprisingly, she didn't join the madness. Instead, she quietly picked a job off the board, wanting to head out. Let's see. Rhodes glanced over the request. It wasn't particularly difficult, but it was a long way from Magnolia. You're going that far? I don't think the reward's enough to cover your drinking bill on the way. Rhodes teased. For someone like Canna, whose drinking habit could bankrupt a small tavern, taking a far-off mission sounded suspiciously like a scenic pub crawl. Canna shrugged, gazing at the guildmates sprawling around them. The guild's too noisy. I just want to get away for a bit. I get it. Rhodes nodded as he helped her officially register the job. But seriously, don't get wasted outside. It's easy to run into trouble. Relax. Canna said, flashing a lazy smile. I am a wizard, after all. She seemed a little lighter, more at ease. She waved casually and started walking away. See you in a few days. And good luck. Huh? Why are you cheering me on for no reason? Rhodes called after her. But Canna didn't even look back. Rhodes chuckled and shouted. Be careful out there. The tavern floor was still a battlefield when Gray appeared, holding a job request in his hand. Rhodes. I want to take this one. Rhodes raised an eyebrow. You too? What? Everyone suddenly got a burst of energy. Gray scratched the back of his head, looking a little sheepish. Natsu's working hard. And honestly, I don't want to lose to him. Rhodes took the request slip and reviewed it carefully, investigating a smuggling ring selling illegal goods. You're going alone? Natsu's going solo too. You two really do compete over everything. And hey, if you say that, Happy's gonna be sad. Gray gave a helpless sigh. I wish I had a cat like that too. One a little less mischievous than Happy. But where am I supposed to find a magical egg like he did? Rhodes grinned. Natsu and Wendy found theirs. No reason you can't too. Keep your eyes open. He stamped the seal to approve the mission and handed the paperwork back. Good luck out there. Hope you find something. Or someone. Come back and pick up your clothes. Huh? And be careful when you're out there. I know, you're so naggy. Myra returned to the guild a little late that day, and she didn't bring Riza back with her. Noticing the faint, suspicious smile playing on Myra's lips, Rhodes immediately grew wary. That's not a good sign. What isn't? Myra asked innocently. You're smiling like you just sold Riza off or something. Myra's smile widened. Oh, it was wonderful. What was? Rhodes pressed, now more suspicious than ever. Riza's performance. You should have come with me. It was amazing. Myra looked like she was trying hard not to burst into laughter. Rhodes felt a chill down his spine. She didn't flip the entire editorial team upside down, did she? Of course not. Myra said, clearly enjoying herself. Riza had a blast. She was so into it, no nerves at all, like a typical first-time model. She had an incredible sense of stage presence. Where is she now? Rhodes asked warily. Myra's smile turned almost devilish. Still at the shoot. She dragged the whole editorial department into working overtime. Riza said she found the job so much fun that she wanted to keep shooting for 3 days and 3 nights straight. And she's insisting that nobody leaves until it's all done. Rhodes froze. Did the magazine even agree to that? At first, they said no. Myra said sweetly. But after Riza had a serious conversation with the editor-in-chief, they agreed. Rhodes could only stay silent, vividly recalling how Riza once seriously negotiated a production company into custom building a full set of armor for her. It was ridiculous, but so very Riza. He sighed, offering a quick prayer for the poor, innocent souls of the editorial team. Myra leaned closer, winking mischievously. Anyway, you should look forward to the new July issue. Riza in all kinds of swimsuits, she looked absolutely stunning. At that moment, Rhodes knew absolutely not to nod. Instead, he chose the safer route. He pulled Myra into a hug, leaned down, and whispered softly into her ear. Actually, the one I'm really looking forward to seeing in a swimsuit is you. Myra's ears instantly turned a soft pink. She tried to keep a straight face but couldn't quite hide her flustered smile. You already have a ton of my old swimsuit magazines at home, don't you? She teased, pretending to pout. After all, she'd seen those stacks herself when she was tidying up Rhodes' house. Those don't count. Rhodes said seriously. Work photos don't have soul. Then, Myra twirled a lock of hair around her finger, shy but smiling brightly. Next time. Why don't we go to the beach together for a vacation? Chapter 288, Let's Go Out of Town Tonight. Mirza didn't return until 3 days later. During that time, Rhodes and Myra even went to check on her once, worried that something might have gone wrong. When they arrived, Mirza was bustling around with commanding energy, directing people to adjust the lights, flipping through back issues of magazines for reference, demanding different styles of clothing, completely taking over the entire editorial department. It honestly looked like she'd turned the place into her personal kingdom. Myra's original editor spotted the two like they were her saviors, practically begging them with her eyes to help rescue the team from Mirza's iron grip. Rhodes tried to act serious, don't push them too hard. But Myra only smiled and cheered. Keep it up, Mirza. The poor editor nearly fainted on the spot. Luckily, Mirza eventually agreed to allow proper break times, sparing the lives of the exhausted workers. They're so lazy, Mirza complained when she finally returned to the guild, shaking her head. I was working so hard to boost the magazine's sales, but they just couldn't keep up. Rhodes sighed. You do realize most of them are just normal people, right? Not battle-hardened wizards? Oh. Right. Mirza paused, then nodded seriously. I guess I overlooked that. I just thought that passion for one's work could unlock infinite stamina. Maybe for some. Rhodes said. But most people work to make a living, not because they're passionate. I understand now. Mirza said, reflecting deeply. I'll have to apologize properly next time I see them. Rhodes had a feeling the magazine might never invite her back, unless that issue somehow shattered sales records and everyone got a bonus. By the way, Mirza added, I need to take a day off. Can you keep an eye out for any high-paying missions? I still have rent due this month. Myra smiled sweetly. Okay, Rhodes blinked. Wait, don't you get paid for modeling? Myra explained. Since Riz is a newcomer, even with a little fame boost from her name, the pay isn't very high. She worked overtime for 3 days. For basically nothing? Rhodes muttered, aghast. This is what you call passion. Mirza said, practically glowing. A boss's dream employee, Rhodes thought, someone who happily worked 3 days straight for pennies. He patted his chest solemnly. Don't worry, we'll help you find the perfect job. With Mirza, Natsu, Gray, and Kana all out, the guild was definitely a little quieter. But manliness. Elfman. Feel the strength of my muscles. Animal possession, bear. Isn't that a little extreme for an arm wrestling match? Chaos still reigned inside the tavern, no matter who was around. Rhodes set his pen down and squeezed into the bench next to Myra. Even with half the troublemakers gone, it's still loud. Myra smiled and playfully nudged him back. That's just how fairy tale is. Rhodes fought back for a second, but then he suddenly let go, making Myra lose balance and stumble right into his arms. He hugged her tightly. I'm planning to head out of town tonight. Want to come with me? Myra gave him a little tap on the chest. Is it because of that? Rhodes gently ran his fingers through her soft white hair. Yeah. I was thinking of asking the master to come like before. But now I have an amazing girlfriend I can rely on. Myra's cheeks warmed, and she smiled softly. Okay. She was so happy that Rhodes trusted her like this. And the master? She asked. I'll ask him to come too. If anything unexpected happens, you can grab me and run using Satan's soul, and we'll let the master clean up the mess. Rhodes said with a wicked grin. You're terrible. Myra laughed, leaning against his chest and closing her eyes. Honestly, she just wanted to stay like this for a while. But it was still the guild, not the same as when they were traveling alone. She sighed a little, rubbing her cheek against Rhodes' chest. She missed those carefree days they spent together, hugging him whenever she wanted. It seemed like, for now, the master wouldn't allow them another long vacation anytime soon. Rhodes suddenly felt a little wronged. Why was it that Myra could freely rub against his chest, but if he tried to return the favor, he might get beaten? It feels like you're thinking about something bad, Myra said, eyeing him suspiciously. How could that be? Rhodes answered seriously. I'm obviously thinking about something good. Oh? Then it must definitely be something bad. Myra teased. You're slandering me. Rhodes protested. Your punishment, no moving for 10 minutes. Myra rolled her eyes and sat back down properly. There was no way she could get carried away like that in the guild. Just then, Levy approached, holding a mission request. She leaned close and whispered mischievously behind one hand, Sister Myra, I didn't see anything just now. Myra's face flushed bright red. She kept her composure as best she could and calmly handed the mission request over to Rhodes. Rhodes, can you check if this mission is appropriate for Levy and the others? Rhodes accepted the sheet and looked over it seriously. Actually, It's not just this one. I don't think any of the missions on the board are suitable for Levy right now. Levy gasped, pretending to clutch her heart. Public revenge. Myra nodded solemnly. Exactly. Sister Myra. Levy whined, playfully tugging on Myra's sleeve as they squabbled. Meanwhile, Rhodes stayed focused, studying the mission details. But really? He said. Why are you guys picking a job so far from the guild? Levy huffed, crossing her arms. Jet and Roy said they've been bored sticking close to home lately. They want to go on a longer trip for a change. Rhodes glanced over at Jet and Roy, only to catch the two guilty parties quickly looking away, whistling innocently. Oh, so that was it. Those two saw how close he and Myra had gotten after traveling together, and now they wanted to give it a shot too. Jet and Roy shot him pleading puppy dog eyes, silently begging for his approval. Rhodes sighed internally but carefully reviewed the mission again. Fortunately, it was just a simple escort into the mountains to gather herbs. Nothing too dangerous, even for a love-struck pair of fools. He helped them finish the registration. Myra leaned over the counter, smiling sweetly. Do your best, Levy and Jet and Roy, try not to slow her down, okay? Jet and Roy both staggered as if they'd been hit straight through the heart. Why is her evaluation of us so harsh? Myra simply smiled mysteriously without answering. Rhodes, meanwhile, had other things on his mind. He wasn't sure exactly how big the real mountain dragon would be, or what strange phenomena might occur during his first attempt at summoning it. Either way, it was clear, trying it in the city in broad daylight was a terrible idea. Even if he didn't want to scare the townspeople or cause a panic, basic caution alone made it obvious. So, that night, Rhodes and Myra waited until the streets were quiet. Under the cover of darkness, they left Magnolia with Master Mikrov alongside them. The three of them rode the Scuttle Crab for nearly 20 kilometers before finally coming to a stop beneath a small grassy hill. Mikrov and Myra exchanged a nod with Rhodes, then stepped back to give him space at the center. Taking a deep breath, Rhodes summoned the Blue Sentinel. A soft azure glow pulsed across the grass as the sturdy golem appeared beside him, ready to guard. He activated the blue buff to quickly restore his magic reserves. Once he was ready, Rhodes raised his hand toward the sky and began chanting, reciting an incantation he hadn't spoken fully aloud in a long time. I am the bridge between two worlds. Creatures of the Summoner's Rift, hear my call, and pass through the gateway. Mountain Dragon. The earth beneath his feet began to glow with a deep ochre light, bright and wild, as if a sleeping mountain itself was awakening. The glow gathered and churned, condensing into three massive forms, towering shapes like stone mountains, radiating a powerful pressure. And then, from the heart of that light, a colossal creature emerged. Wings like cliffs unfurled with a thunderous crack. A broad chest heaved as it rose higher, scales the color of ancient rock gleaming under the starlight. Its head lifted proudly to the sky. And it roared. Raw War. Chapter 289, Mountain Dragon. The very ground rumbled under their feet. A huge crater split open around the mountain dragon's claws as it landed, its hind legs gripping the mountain wall like a massive, perched bird. Standing at the edge of the crater, Rhodes felt a strange sense of dislocation, as if he hadn't summoned the dragon, but instead had been transported into Summoner's Rift himself. His body swayed, drained nearly to exhaustion, and he instinctively leaned toward Myra for support. It's really a dragon. Mikrov raised his right arm to shield Rhodes and Myra behind him, eyes wide in astonishment. Effortlessly reshaping the earth. What terrifying magic and earth mastery. He had never doubted Rhodes, he believed in the existence of dragons, just as he believed Natsu was raised by one. But seeing such a colossal, living dragon before his eyes still shook him to the core. So this was the kind of being humanity once fought against 400 years ago? The mountain dragon glanced at them, then beat its massive wings. Even just the wind from its wings forced them to shield their faces. The dragon circled overhead, its wings stirring the grass and trees, before landing again inside the crater. It lowered its massive body and stared at Rhodes, unmoving, a clear sense of puzzlement in its gaze. Mikrov and Myra remained frozen in awe, but Rhodes felt something stranger. It was like seeing an entrance animation, only from a first-person perspective. Rhodes cleared his throat and spoke tentatively, next time. Could you maybe skip the flashy entrance? Surprisingly, the mountain dragon nodded, slowly and stiffly, like a giant stone statue coming to life. The jagged ridges around its neck, more like spikes of stone than scales, rose and fell slightly as it nodded. The dragon kept staring at Rhodes, clearly awaiting further instructions. Meanwhile, Rhodes felt his magic draining at an alarming rate. He hurriedly asked, can you, take this crater apart? The mountain dragon nodded again. With a deep rumble, cracks splintered across the surrounding crater walls. The earth crumbled and collapsed inward, leveling the area around them. The ground shook again beneath their feet. Rhodes patted Myra's hand, signaling her to let go, intending to step closer and touch the mountain dragon. Myra, reluctant to release him, instead supported Rhodes carefully as they walked forward. In the past, summoned beasts usually approached Rhodes eagerly when he reached out his hand. But this mountain dragon stayed towering where it was, simply lowering the very tip of its tail for him to touch. It felt, somehow, like he was being looked down on. Still, Rhodes placed his palm against the dragon's tail tip, the texture cool and rough like ancient stone. A brief surge of understanding flowed through him, not as much information as usual, but enough. Relieved, Rhodes finally let out a breath. The mountain dragon gave a low shake of its head, the stone ridges along its neck clattering against each other like armor. Its body shimmered, becoming translucent, and then it vanished. Rhodes' legs buckled almost immediately, all strength drained from him. He collapsed into Myra's arms, nearly fainting. "Are you okay?" Myra asked, her voice full of concern as she supported him firmly. "I'm fine. Just completely out of mana." Rhodes smiled weakly. "I'm glad I asked you to come. Otherwise, I might have been scooped up by the Master's big hands today." Makarov asked. "Well? Did you feel like you were losing control?" Rhodes thought for a moment, then answered, "That special connection is definitely there, just like with the other creatures I've summoned from Summoner's Rift. But it felt a little different. Its intelligence seemed higher. And when it returned, it almost seemed impatient? Though it might just be my imagination." Makarov nodded thoughtfully. "Either way, let's head back first." When they had come out here, they had ridden on a scuttle crab. But on the way back, Makarov decided otherwise. He enlarged himself with his magic, scooped up both Rhodes and Myra onto his massive shoulders, and sprinted back toward the city with heavy, thunderous strides. "Master, really, I can rest a bit and summon the crab again. Isn't this a bit much?" Rhodes said, a little embarrassed as he clutched Myra tightly. "I think it's very interesting," Myra said happily, one hand grabbing Makarov's collar, the other securely holding Rhodes to her. It looked like she was enjoying this far more than she let on. "Ha ha ha." Makarov laughed heartily, his giant voice booming across the fields. "Isn't this just a father carrying his children on his shoulders for a ride? What's so exaggerated about that?" The word father struck a chord deep in Myra and Rhodes' hearts. Master had always quietly played this role, carrying the burdens, shielding them from the council's wrath, solving their countless problems behind the scenes. For a guild full of wild, helpless children, it was a blessing to be carried by him like this, protected and carefree. If they ever had a wedding speech, it would definitely have to be delivered by the Master. Myra leaned against Rhodes and shouted like a child, "Yay! Let's go, Master." Rhodes felt a little awkward at first, but eventually he laughed too and played along. "Yeah. Let's go for a ride. Master, faster." Myra cheered. "Not too fast," Rhodes said hurriedly, feeling a little carsick from the bouncing. "Ha ha ha ha." Makarov roared with laughter as he carried the two of them like precious bundles through the countryside and back toward Magnolia. And then, "Master Makarov." "Sir." "Your Excellency." When they entered the city, they found the streets and plazas packed with people. Some were wrapped tightly in quilts, others still in their pajamas, all looking panicked and confused. Hearing so many people calling out with various titles and nicknames, Makarov asked in confusion, "What's going on? Why is everyone gathered outside?" "Didn't you hear?" Someone answered breathlessly, "There was an earthquake. We all ran outside because we thought the buildings might collapse." "Earthquake?" Makarov repeated, startled. "What earthquake?" "Just a few minutes ago. The whole city shook." The crowd exclaimed. "Ah. This." Rhodes suddenly felt a deep wave of guilt. They had already traveled quite a distance away from where he summoned the mountain dragon, but apparently, the tremors still reached Magnolia. Myra leaned closer and gently patted Rhodes' head, whispering with a mischievous smile, "Maybe. Since it's an earth element creature, its magic affected the land a little more than you thought." "Oh." Rhodes sighed inwardly, already thinking about how to apologize to the citizens of Magnolia without looking too guilty. But before Rhodes could even react, Makarov had already made his move. He stomped heavily on the ground, and the plaza beneath their feet trembled violently. With a big, innocent grin, he asked the crowd, "Was it this kind of earthquake?" "Yes. Exactly. That's the feeling. Actually, I think this one's even worse." Someone muttered nervously. The entire crowd suddenly fell silent. A few seconds later, an uproar exploded all at once. "It was you. You're way out of line, Master. Why would you pull this kind of stunt at night? Think about the kids trying to sleep." "Yeah, and my soup got spilled." Makarov scratched the back of his head sheepishly and bowed to the crowd. Sorry. I just suddenly had the urge to take the kids for a nighttime stroll." "Ha ha. As he apologized, he gently lowered Rhodes and Myra down from his shoulders, returning himself to normal size with a puff of magic. Even though his explanation sounded completely absurd, the residents of Magnolia didn't doubt it at all. After all, this was fairy tale. Everyone in town had long accepted that if anything chaotic happened, there was an 80% chance it somehow involved fairy tale, and 90% of the time, they meant no harm. Sorry for disturbing everyone's rest. Rhodes and Myra also lowered their heads politely, feeling warm inside at the way Makarov had tried to cover for them. Chapter 290, Dragon Soul. It's just fairy tale causing trouble again. The short sentence spread quickly from the crowd, reaching the ears of every resident who had rushed outside. After hearing it, everyone grumbled a little but simply turned around and went back home. They were used to it by now. Before Magnolia even developed Guild Arts mode. Incidents like this used to happen way more often, and back then, someone always ended up having to rebuild half their house afterward. This time, since no real damage was caused, most folks just treated it like an unexpected disaster drill. In fact, there were even fairy tale members scattered among the crowd. After spotting the guildmaster's massive figure and hearing his sheepish apology, they all yawned and shuffled back home too, as if nothing unusual had happened. At most, some of them muttered things like, "TCH, even at midnight they're going on a date riding on the master's shoulder. So shameless. I'm sorry for causing trouble, master." Rhodes apologized sincerely. No. Makarov shook his head warmly. "I should be the one thanking you. Good thing you insisted we go far enough out of town." Myra smiled, hands behind her back. "If we had only listened to the master and stopped just outside the city, we might have caused a real panic." All right, Makarov said, waving them off with a chuckle. "I need to head back. I'll have to apologize to the mayor tomorrow." As for Rhodes, Myra raised a hand lightly, smiling. "I'll take him home." "Good. Have a proper rest, you two." Makarov nodded and strolled away, hands tucked behind his back. Myra turned to Rhodes and opened her arms playfully. "Want me to carry you back?" Rhodes gave it a thought, then smirked. "Okay." Myra without hesitation, crouched down a bit, grasped Rhodes' thighs with both hands, and lifted him easily onto her back. To her, it wasn't difficult at all, whether carrying or hugging him, it felt just as natural. But very quickly, Myra noticed something suspicious. "Don't let your hands fall somewhere weird," she scolded lightly. "Oh." After a few steps, Myra asked over her shoulder, "Are you planning to take over that dragon too?" "It's different this time," Rhodes answered honestly. "I don't need to do a formal takeover. The mountain dragon already gave me something called a dragon soul. With it, I can tap into its power directly. Basically, it's like I completed the initial contract when I summoned it." Myra's eyes lit up happily. "That's amazing. But judging from today's summoning," Rhodes muttered with a tired sigh, "it's ridiculously draining. I'll show you tomorrow, maybe it'll look cool enough to make it worth it." Myra laughed softly. "Then I'll be looking forward to it." As she spoke, she tilted her head slightly to glance back at him, and Rhodes took the opportunity to plant a kiss on her cheek. Humphrey. Myra let out a soft, playful grunt, then leaned her head back and lightly bumped his forehead with hers. Rhodes grinned and tightened his arms around her a little, enjoying the quiet moment. After a bit, Myra finally set him down gently. Her face had a faint, adorable blush. "Ahem." Rhodes coughed, feeling a little awkward. Maybe I should just walk on my own." Myra shook her head mischievously. "No need. I have a better solution." "Huh?" "Satan soul." "Hey." She hoisted Rhodes up onto her shoulders, spread her wings, and, whoosh, flew straight back to Magnolia in under a minute. She didn't even bother using the door, she blasted straight through the second-floor window. Glass shards rained down everywhere. Myra casually shook off the fragments and then tossed Rhodes onto the bed. Rhodes lay there staring up at the darkened ceiling, feeling conflicted. The lights flickered on, and Myra, now back to her usual appearance, entered the room with a slightly guilty expression, glancing at the damage she'd caused. "Are you hurt?" she asked hurriedly. After all, a wizard low on magic could easily get injured. Rhodes, seizing the moment, pointed dramatically to his chest and then tapped his lips. "It hurts right here. I need special treatment to recover." "I'm sorry, but who told you to?" Myra pouted, cheeks flushed, but still leaned down and pressed a soft kiss on his lips. Just as she was about to pull away, Rhodes reached up and gently wrapped his arms around her. "Ah!" Myra yelped softly as she tumbled into his embrace. In the next instant, Rhodes smoothly flipped them over, switching their positions. Now he was on top. Seeing her slight panic, Rhodes reached out and stroked her cheek gently. When Myra shyly closed her eyes, he lowered his head and kissed her again. Myra's arms wound around his neck, clinging tightly. Their kiss deepened, the world melting away. Rhodes' hands began to move instinctively, caressing her back with care, but also a growing boldness. Myra's cheeks grew rosier, her breathing grew quicker. When Rhodes' hands started tugging at the belt around her waist. Snap. Myra grabbed his wrist firmly. "No," she cried, her voice soft but urgent. She flipped him back over with surprising strength, pinning him down by the shoulders. You need to rest properly." "I'm not tired," Rhodes argued, refusing to back down. "You are," Myra insisted, her face burning. Before he could protest further, Myra scrambled off the bed and rushed toward the door, only to realize it was still locked from the outside. They had entered through the broken window. She froze, tiptoed awkwardly back into the room, and sat down. Rhodes remained sitting on the bed, staring at her, unsure if she was angry, shy, worried, or all three. Myra fidgeted, clearly struggling with herself. She couldn't just storm out, he might misunderstand and think she was upset. But what should she say? They both spoke at the same time, then awkwardly paused. Rhodes finally stepped forward and gently took her hand. "I was too impatient," he said sincerely, gazing into her eyes. "I'm sorry. Please don't be mad at me. I didn't I didn't mean that, today. Tomorrow. No. I mean next time. No. I mean sometime in the future. Anyway." Myra was completely flustered, her face growing redder by the second. She couldn't believe she was saying something so embarrassing. Anyway, I'm leaving. See you tomorrow," she blurted out, voice rising like a panicked bird. It sounded like she hadn't said anything concrete, yet somehow, it also felt like she had said everything. Rhodes smiled warmly and gently helped straighten her tousled clothes and messy hair. "See you tomorrow." With a whoosh, Myra spun around and bolted for the window. Her exit was particularly dramatic, flying out with a flurry of wings. "I'll find someone to fix your window tomorrow," she called back hurriedly as she disappeared into the night. Rhodes chuckled, sprawling back on the bed. At a quiet house on the other side of Magnolia, Elfman was busy with his late-night training. Sweat dripped down his brow as he pushed himself harder. Suddenly, he froze. A strong wave of magic pressure was approaching fast. He rushed to the door, threw it open, and saw a very familiar figure floating down with dark wings, Myra, still in her Satan soul form. "Sister?" Elfman blinked, confused. "Are there enemies around?" He paused, narrowing his eyes. "Wait. Why's your face so red?" Myra stiffened. She resisted the urge to cover her burning cheeks. Instead, she scanned Elfman up and down. Seeing how sweaty he was from training, she gave a mischievous little laugh. "Training, huh? Good timing," Myra said sweetly. "It's been a while since I personally guided your practice." "As sister?" Elfman stammered, alarm bells ringing in his head. He tried to close the door. Too late. Myra grabbed his wrist, effortlessly tossed him into the courtyard, and declared, "Come on, Elfman. Bring out the Beast King soul." The next morning Rhodes and Myra were back in the guild, handling their usual daily tasks behind the counter. Myra glanced at him nervously, her fingers twisting the pen until it almost snapped in half. "Are you feeling better now?" she asked carefully. Rhodes smiled reassuringly. "Yeah, fully recovered. My magic's back to normal." Myra fidgeted a little, then asked in a tiny voice, "Then, why didn't you come over for breakfast this morning?" She was a little worried. Had he gotten mad about last night? Rhodes scratched his cheek, looking a bit sheepish. That. I might have slept in a little too late. You know. Tired from yesterday." He couldn't exactly tell her the truth, that he spent all morning washing clothes, cleaning up broken glass, and fixing his room because of someone's dramatic entrance. Chapter 291, Newcomer Rhodes, and Myra pouted and muttered. "You really didn't come because you overslept?" "I waited for so long." Rhodes glanced at the lunchbox she was holding and shamelessly asked, "Is that for me?" "No." Myra huffed. "Oh." Rhodes replied casually. "Oh?" Myra nearly exploded. "Where's all that boldness you had yesterday? Why aren't you opening it yourself and checking?" Rhodes, sensing the atmosphere shift, quickly reeled himself in. He recognized the lunchbox, it was enchanted to keep food warm. And frankly, who else would Myra bother bringing breakfast to? Elfman? Yeah, right. Feigning innocence, Rhodes picked up the mission registration book and moved closer. "Did I write this wrong?" he said casually. "Do you remember Natsu and Happy's last mission?" Myra instinctively turned her attention to the log. "I remember it was." Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Rhodes' hand sneak toward the lunchbox. She caught his wrist midair, barely holding back a smile as she narrowed her eyes. "And just what do you think you're doing?" Rhodes stayed calm. "I saw a hair strand on it." Thought I'd help you remove it. Really? Gurgle. Betrayed by his own stomach, Rhodes could only look helplessly at the ceiling. He had burned through an enormous amount of magic yesterday and had skipped breakfast too. Myra burst out laughing and opened a lunchbox herself, sliding it toward him. Eat up. Inside was a simple but carefully prepared meal, a fluffy omelette, slices of ham, a hearty vegetable porridge, and a small side of pickled vegetables. It wasn't anything fancy, but somehow, seeing it made him imagine her, wearing an apron, busy and cheerful in the kitchen. Overwhelmed with emotion, Rhodes pulled Myra into a hug first, then obediently sat down to eat. Delicious. Myra perched nearby, watching him intently as he ate every last bite. Then, just as he finished the last sip of porridge, she casually said, "Actually, Elfman made it. And he didn't wash his hands before cooking." Cough cough cough. Rhodes almost choked to death on the spot. Myra giggled sweetly and patted his back gently. "I'm kidding," she said, her voice light and teasing. "She totally got me. I'll get my revenge someday," Rhodes thought, grumbling internally. At that moment, Elfman approached hesitantly. "Sister," he mumbled. "I want to go out on a job." "Let's take a look," Myra said, flipping through the mission board. Meanwhile, Rhodes noticed something odd. He leaned closer, scrutinizing Elfman's face carefully. "Why is your face swollen?" Elfman rubbed his cheek awkwardly. I accidentally fell." "Accidentally fell? Does that even happen to someone as sturdy as you?" "Manly," Elfman shouted, trying to save face. Rhodes turned to Myra suspiciously. She definitely knew something. Myra simply smiled, her voice innocent as she explained, "He really did fall. Fell into a very hard object," she added cheerfully. "But don't worry. I already treated him with medicine." "I see." Rhodes nodded solemnly. "You're lucky to have such a wonderful sister looking after you." "Really?" Myra beamed, her violet eyes curving into a brilliant, bashful smile at her boyfriend's praise. "Manly." Elfman felt truly lucky. His sister even helped him apply medicine after training him so intensely, he was so moved he nearly cried. Though the task he picked wasn't particularly difficult, Rhodes still gave him a few careful instructions, just like always. "Don't worry. A real man is always prepared." Elfman clenched his fists with determination and quickly set out on his mission. A little while later, Makarov came downstairs, dressed in a proper formal suit and carrying a thick stack of papers. "Master, are you heading out?" Myra asked. Makarov nodded seriously. "I'm going to apologize to the mayor. And send these." It was all the self-criticism reports he had written over the past few days. Rhodes immediately felt a pang of guilt. "Should I take care of it for you, Master?" "No need," Makarov said firmly, waving his hand. "Just focus on looking after the guild. Things like this are a guild master's responsibility." He looked slightly uneasy, as if worried they'd take the chance to sneak off on another vacation. He could already imagine it. "Oh no, mailing the reports isn't sincere enough, we must deliver them personally. And of course, not just to the branch in Fiore, it has to be hand-delivered all the way to the council headquarters abroad." No, after finally getting a few days of peace and quiet, Makarov absolutely refused to go through that madness again. Rhodes could only sigh. He genuinely just wanted to help, not run off somewhere. But if the master didn't agree, there was nothing he could do. "Myra," Rhodes said slyly, "maybe you should hang on to those 2 bottles of good wine we bought." "Okay," Myra smiled, understanding immediately. "I'll give them to the master once he comes back." While they were traveling, besides bringing back some rare herbs for Grandma Porliuzica, they'd also picked up some excellent bottles of wine as a gift for the master. But when they first returned, Myra, after believing some nonsense Rhodes had spouted, had gotten stricter about the master's drinking and hadn't given him the wine yet. Now, Rhodes was feeling just a tiny bit guilty. He had also made sure to ask Porliuzica about Makarov's health during their visit. Fortunately, the master's old illnesses hadn't flared up recently, so Rhodes felt a little more at ease about letting him enjoy himself. Porliuzica grumbled about how Rhodes picked herbs like an amateur, but Rhodes could tell she secretly appreciated the thought. Later that afternoon, Mirza came to the guild, her expression bright and determined. She had came to accept a mission, the one Myra and Rhodes had helped her pick out just yesterday. The reward for the mission is 500,000 jewels, just enough to cover the rent for her 5 rooms. It wouldn't take long either. By the looks of it, she could probably finish the job with just a single good fight. "This one's perfect?" Mirza nodded in satisfaction. "By the way, Rhodes, can you wait until I get back for that sparring match?" "No problem," Rhodes replied with a smile. Anyway, Mirza's mission wouldn't take more than a few days. In the meantime, he could focus on training with Myra. "Take over, Mountain Dragon Soul." In a flash of ochre light, Rhodes' arms and legs transformed into sturdy, earth-colored dragon claws. Massive wings sprouted from his back, and a few tough-looking scales appeared along his cheeks. An overwhelming surge of magic burst out from him. His presence now was almost on par with Myra's Satan soul. When he opened his eyes, they had changed into deep, earthy brown dragon pupils. The sharp lift at the corner of his eyes and the faintly visible fangs at the edges of his smile gave him a much more primal, wild aura than usual. "Rhodes?" Myra called out tentatively. Rhodes immediately understood what she was worried about. He grinned, revealing a slightly mischievous flash of his sharper canines. "Don't worry. I'm still me. My will hasn't been affected." Hearing that, Myra let out a soft sigh of relief. The greatest danger of takeover magic was always the risk of losing control to the being you were trying to merge with. But seeing Rhodes so calm, so naturally himself, put her heart at ease. Still, that smile, the wildness lingering in his eyes and his slightly rougher edge, it wasn't the usual gentle or sunny Rhodes she knew. It was dangerous. It was thrilling. Myra's heart thumped wildly in her chest. Now she finally understood how Rhodes must have felt when he first saw her Satan soul form. "Although the magic cost is pretty high," Rhodes said thoughtfully, stomping his dragonized foot into the ground. "This feels seriously strong. Plus..." The ground around them rumbled. Thick, circular stone walls suddenly erupted upward, surrounding both him and Myra in a tight ring. It was just like the mountain dragon's magic that day, the earth itself responding to his will. In this form, he could wield earth magic. Rhodes leaned forward. His dragon claw braced against the stone wall behind Myra's shoulder, trapping her between his arm and the stones. His forehead pressed gently against hers. "Now you can't run away," he said, his voice low and teasing. Myra's cheeks flushed red. "Satan soul, take over." Dark wings unfurled from her back as she transformed in an instant. She looped her right arm around Rhodes' neck, pulling herself close, her lips curving into a smirk. "Who said I was trying to run?" she whispered, her tongue flicking playfully across her lips. They smiled at each other. Without another word, they moved simultaneously, and the battle began. The stone wall surrounding them cracked and shattered under their first few blows. Punches and kicks flew between them, sharp and fast, neither of them holding anything back. Rhodes pushed forward, Myra spun and countered. They traded more than 20 lightning-fast rounds before Myra leapt into the air, her dark wings slicing through the air like blades. High above, Myra formed a swirling purple-black sphere between her palms, magic crackling at its core. Not backing down, Rhodes launched himself skyward, opened his jaws, and unleashed a roaring breath of dragon magic, a blast of countless spinning, razor-sharp stones. Chapter 292. July x 784. Rhodes collapsed onto the ground. It wasn't because he had been defeated, he simply ran out of magic power. The consumption of the mountain dragon soul was terrifying. Even with the blue buff continuously replenishing his mana, it still wasn't enough. In total, Rhodes and Myra had clashed for just over a minute before he hit his limit. That said, when comparing their abilities, there was a clear difference. Myra's Satan soul was an all-around enhancement, power, speed, magic. Rhodes' mountain dragon soul, by contrast, was heavily specialized for defense. Even when he wasn't trying to defend, Myra's attacks barely fazed him. On the other hand, when Rhodes landed a hit, Myra would genuinely feel it. Considering he was still new to using earth magic and fighting with the dragon's powers, this form was incredibly strong. The only real downside was the absurd mana consumption. Although, if the mountain dragon could hear his complaints, it would probably respond, "That's your problem, not mine." Right now, during their halftime break, Rhodes was lying on Myra's lap to recover. At the same time, he was gently rubbing Myra's back with one hand. His excuse? "I hit you during our match. I feel bad. Let me help you feel better." At first, Myra's cheeks flushed crimson. But after a while, she relaxed, finding the sensation surprisingly comforting. In return, she reached out and began lightly massaging Rhodes' scalp. Rhodes felt like he was in heaven, getting his mana back, being pampered, and enjoying the feel of her lap pillow all at once. But a thought flashed through his mind: he really needed to work harder at training. Otherwise, in the future, between magic battles and other activities, his waist and legs might end up giving out first. Their sparring match had taken place far from town, and by the time they finished and returned, it was already late evening. Thanks to the mana boost from his blue buff, Rhodes had just enough strength to escort Myra home. Myra gave him a quick kiss at her doorstep, then ran inside before he could follow her. Rhodes could only chuckle helplessly and head back to his place alone. Fortunately, the broken window at his house had already been repaired. Earlier that morning, his landlord, Goodman, had come by to ask about the damage. Rhodes awkwardly apologized, explaining that he had gotten into a little argument with his girlfriend and accidentally broken the window. Goodman gave him a knowing nod, as if suddenly enlightened, and patted him sympathetically on the shoulder. He didn't seem upset at all. After all, in Magnolia, fairy tale wizards breaking a few windows here and there was considered extremely polite behavior compared to the usual disasters. And as for Rhodes' girlfriend, although Mara Jane looked sweet and gentle on the outside, anyone familiar with fairy tale knew the truth about her other side. Rhodes couldn't shake the feeling that Goodman's understanding smile hid a story of its own. Maybe he too had once been beaten up by his wife. Of course, sparring like that wasn't something Rhodes could do every single day. Most of the time, he focused on practicing his partial takeover of the mountain dragon soul. Thanks to the solid foundation he had built training with other summons before, adapting to the dragon form went relatively smoothly. Until his magic reserves grew larger, partial takeover would be a crucial combat form for him. There was also the Rift Herald. Compared to the mountain dragon soul's high consumption, the Rift Herald form could sustain longer fights. That said, Rhodes secretly preferred riding inside the Rift Herald's cockpit instead of taking over its form directly. Ursa, after she finished her previous mission, she immediately took on a new one. The reason? During her last mission, she had spotted a set of armor she wanted, but it was outrageously expensive. Plus, she'd suddenly gotten inspiration for a brand new armor design, which meant she needed a hefty sum to pay for materials. Rhodes had seen the rough sketches Ursa drew, but they were so abstract he couldn't make heads or tails of them. Shockingly, Myra understood them instantly, and even gave Ursa a few suggestions for improvements. The two of them seemed to be chatting enthusiastically, leaving Rhodes to wonder if this was some kind of secret language shared only by abstract artists. From what he could gather, they were trying to create a set of armor that was extremely elastic and flexible, to the point it was more like cloth than armor. Rhodes couldn't figure out the point. Was it so Ursa wouldn't need to refit her armor if she gained weight? Regardless, to finance her new armor sets, Ursa accepted a mission with a 3 million jewel reward. The task? Defeat a powerful horned monster, one not only skilled in combat but also highly adept at running away. It was considered a pretty tough job. Even for Ursa, it would probably take quite a bit of time to handle alone. Why don't the three of us team up and go together? Rhodes suggested, half seriously. He was a little jealous of the reward, and honestly, it wasn't just to flatter her. For a monster like this, which was slippery and evasive, teaming up would make catching it much easier. Less time wasted, more efficiency. It was just good strategy. Ursa looked tempted. Teaming up with Rhodes had been a smooth experience before. But Myra shook her head and objected, no way. It's the end of the month, and the master said we can't take long-distance missions right now. Reluctantly, Ursa accepted and left. Rhodes sighed. There went his shot at an easy million jewel. Myra bumped his shoulder playfully, if you're that eager to make money, we can just pick some nearby jobs. The kind we can finish and come back from in a day. Rhodes grinned, sounds perfect? Why not combine making money with a date? It had been a while since they'd gone questing together, he missed it. A new month rolled in amidst their busy days. At the start of the month, Rhodes and Myra worked together to tally up the guild's supplies, then went out to shop for replenishments. While they were walking through the marketplace, Myra suddenly asked, hey, do you remember what's happening the day after tomorrow? The day after tomorrow? Rhodes' first reaction was her birthday, but that was wrong. Myra's birthday was in August. Myra smiled warmly, it's the first anniversary of when you officially joined Fairy Tale. Rhodes thought for a moment and said with a touch of emotion. Has it really been a year already? Yep. In just 1 year, Rhodes, the strongest newcomer has become a reliable fairy tale wizard. Myra said brightly. How about we go celebrate? Of course. Rhodes smiled, then shifted the bag he was carrying to his right hand and reached out with his left to gently hold hers. But I think today is important too. He added. Before Myra could ask, Rhodes continued with a teasing grin, today's the anniversary of when we first met, Myra.Jane. He deliberately mimicked the awkward, hesitant pronunciation he had used the first time he ever spoke her name. Myra paused, then followed his lead, imitating his clumsy first attempt at her name, Ro.Day. The two of them burst out laughing. Thinking back to that day, neither could have imagined they would end up like this. Just then, they overheard a noisy quarrel nearby. What kind of wizard is that? He's just a drunkard who smells like booze. Don't talk about my father like that. But it's true. He stinks of alcohol. Wizards aren't supposed to be like that at all. We're gonna be knights when we grow up, not wizards. The sounds of bickering drew Rhodes and Myra's attention. It was a group of children arguing, and the one being teased seemed to be Romeo, Mikau's son. The other kids, seeing two adults nearby, and recognizing them as fairy tale wizards, immediately scattered like frightened animals. If it had been adults bad-mouthing fairy tale, Rhodes and Myra might have given them a good beating. But kids arguing. Well, that wasn't something you could seriously hold against them. And truth be told, what they said wasn't exactly wrong. Still, it was rude to mock someone's father right in front of them. Sister Myra, Brother Rhodes. Romeo greeted them politely, though his eyes were brimming with tears. Myra handed everything she was carrying to Rhodes and gently ruffled Romeo's hair. "Don't listen to what they say," she said softly. "Your father is a wonderful wizard. But I'm gonna prove it. I'm gonna show them my dad's stronger than all of theirs." Romeo cried, and then ran off, determination burning in his little heart. Rhodes and Myra exchanged a glance but didn't stop him. It was normal for kids to want to defend their families, after all. Still, Rhodes quietly hoped Uncle Macau would spend a little less time chasing after his girlfriend, and a little more time being there for Romeo. When they returned to the guild after finishing their errands, they found Macau waiting for them, with a mission request in hand. "I want to take this job," Macau said firmly. Today, he looked different. He didn't have the usual lazy, decadent aura about him. Instead, he looked serious. "Hakobi Snow Mountain. To fight Vulcan?" Rhodes read the request aloud, frowning. He had never seen Vulcan himself, but he'd heard the rumors. It was a dangerous beast, extremely powerful. Was Uncle Macau crazy? Myra, clearly worried, asked, "Is it because of Romeo?" Macau looked surprised, then gave a small, sheepish smile. "So you know, huh?" Rhodes said. "We bumped into Romeo earlier. He was just having a spat with some other kids." "You don't have to push yourself too hard, Uncle," Macau said seriously. "As a father, there are some things you just have to protect." Rhodes didn't entirely agree. Kids argue for pride all the time, and most forget about it in a few days. Was it really something worth fighting over? Macau glanced at him with a teasing smile. "When you and Myra have a kid, you'll understand. Trust me." Bang. Myra stamped the mission request so hard that the desk cracked. "Be careful out there, Uncle," Myra said sweetly, smiling with a frighteningly gentle look. The shock woke up Makarov, who had been dozing behind the counter with his legs crossed. Macau flinched but still winked mischievously at Rhodes. Rhodes ignored him and went through the usual paperwork, handing over the necessary information along with a reminder, "Watch out for avalanches on Hakobi Mountain. If the situation turns bad, don't be stubborn. Run." "Bah. Who do you think you're talking to?" Macau scoffed. "When I was already a wizard, you weren't even born yet. A few Vulcans are child's play to me." With a casual wave, Macau strutted out the door. Rhodes turned to Makarov, concerned. "Will he be alright?" The old master shook his head and chuckled. "Just like he said, 3 or 5 Vulcans won't be a problem for him." "Good." Rhodes reached for Myra's hand and gently brushed her palm. "Still, you hit that desk pretty hard. Did it hurt?" Before Myra could answer, the guild door slammed open. "I'm back. Mission complete," Natsu shouted proudly. "Aye, sir." Happy added. "And this time we only burned down one church." Crash. Mikro fell right off the counter. Natsu. Although he got a stern scolding, it wasn't too heavy. After all, only one building was destroyed this time. That was practically restrained for Natsu. Still, Makarov made him write a full self-criticism. Gray also returned that afternoon. Apparently, he'd successfully cracked the smuggling ring and hadn't ended up walking naked through the streets this time. So, technically, mission accomplished. Still, Makarov couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. According to the mission board schedule, a few more problem children would be returning to the guild in the next few days. The poor master sighed and trudged up the stairs, utterly exhausted. The guild was relatively peaceful, for about 5 minutes. Then Natsu and Gray started fighting again, for reasons nobody could remember. The whole guild cheered and gathered around. It wasn't until Krav rushed in from outside that Natsu froze. "Natsu. I just heard, there's a fire dragon spotted in Harjan." Boom. Gray was floored in a sneak attack as Natsu knocked him aside. "What did you say?" Natsu rushed over to Krav, eyes sparkling. "Where?" Harjan. "That's what I heard." "Happy, let's go." Without a second thought, Natsu grabbed his bag, barely even setting foot inside the guild before rushing out again. "Wait for me, Natsu." Happy flapped after him, turning back at the door and shouting, "Rhodes, the grilled fish we ordered, give it to warm." "Sure." Rhodes waved, but something felt off. "Wait, you haven't paid yet." "It's fine." Myra giggled, holding up a wallet. "He forgot this." Rhodes breathed a sigh of relief. "Perfect." Inside, the wallet probably contained their last mission's reward. Rhodes certainly wasn't shy about claiming it for their tab. Behind him, Gray staggered back to his feet, covering his bruised face. "Damn it, Natsu. You sneaky bastard, just wait till you get back. Chapter 293, Encounter. Do you think it's real this time? Myra asked as she placed the grilled fish Happy had ordered down in front of Worm. Rhodes leaned back and replied. It's a bit cruel to say this about Natsu, but probably not. If a real fire dragon showed up, it would have been all over the newspapers already. And Krov's not exactly the most reliable source. Rhodes reached out and tore off a piece of fish to taste. Not bad. No wonder Happy was obsessed with it. When he reached for another bite, Myra smacked his hand away. Stop it. Dinner's almost ready, and you're fighting Worm for food with greasy hands. Worm rubbed its head affectionately against Myra's palm. This hostess was way too nice. Hey, were you talking about me? Krov returned from chatting with some guildmates, dropping off his mission paperwork. He caught sight of Rhodes holding out his oily fingers like a spoiled kid, while Myra patiently wiped them clean. Then he glanced at Worm gobbling down food nearby. The scene looked oddly like a cozy family of three. Rhodes handed over Krov's task form and teased. We're just saying you'll get what's coming if you spread fake rumors. Krov blinked, confused. Why am I getting blamed? I only heard it from someone else. Myra smiled sweetly as she finished wiping Rhodes' hands and asked. Krov, what do you think Natsu's personality is like? He's totally going to think I tricked him. Krov mumbled, his confidence shrinking. It's fine. I'll just explain when he gets back. Good luck. Myra encouraged her gently. Somehow, that made Krov even less certain about his chances. Maybe I should just grab another mission and disappear. He muttered. Rhodes, sensing Myra's subtle mischief, decided to add more fuel to the fire. What, you're scared of Natsu? If it were me, I'd fight him head-on. That's the manly thing to do. Why are you suddenly talking like Elfman? Krov stiffened his neck stubbornly. Who's scared? I'll wait here. Rhodes sighed dramatically. If everyone in this guild were this honest, Fairy Tale would have gone bankrupt ages ago. When Natsu gets back, Rhodes said casually. Let's go visit Wendy at the Kate shelter. Where did that come from? Myra tilted her head curiously. I promised I'd tell her when I could summon dragons. Rhodes said. And I promised I'd visit when I had time. Myra propped her chin up with one hand, putting on a sorrowful expression. Rhodes just loves making promises to girls. Poor me. Rhodes couldn't help but laugh helplessly. Don't be ridiculous. Wendy's just a little kid. Myra chuckled, trying to fake a jealous pout, but the target of her jealousy was just too innocent for it to stick. Anyway, let's wait a few more days. She said with a smile. At least until the start of the month. Alright then, just find some time to show Natsu the mountain dragon. Myra said with a giggle. And then you can sneak off without him. Sounds good. Rhodes agreed easily. Visiting Wendy could count as a little trip too. And naturally, it'd be even better if it was just the two of them. On the first anniversary of their meeting, Rhodes gifted Myra a bouquet of soft pink roses. A small gesture to commemorate the day they met, and to celebrate how far their love had come. Myra's face lit up in pure surprise. They'd spent the whole day together, yet she hadn't noticed when or how he managed to buy flowers in secret. If he's this sneaky now, what if he hides his money in the future? The thought made her puff out her cheeks slightly. So, to warn him, Myra gave Rhodes a long, lingering hug and an even longer kiss. They stayed locked together until both of them were completely out of breath before they finally broke apart. July 2nd was an ordinary day, at least on the surface. If there was anything special about it, it was that it was Wednesday, the day when the latest issue of Sorcerer's Weekly hit the stands. But this week's cover stunned everyone. At first glance, it seemed like a typical swimsuit model, a striking redhead. But a closer look revealed the truth, the delicate face, the Fairy Tale Guild emblem on her arm, and the massive headline beside her. Fairy Queen, Ursa. The legendary Fairy Queen had released a swimsuit photo shoot. The news hit like a thunderclap across Fiore. Old gentlemen who had long since despaired of seeing another swimsuit edition from Red Jane suddenly found new hope. Sales of the magazine skyrocketed at a terrifying pace. Newsstands, bookstores, everywhere was packed with people scrambling to get a copy. Meanwhile, over in Harjan, a petite blonde girl slumped dramatically onto a bench, waving her arms and legs in a tantrum. Ah! What's wrong with everyone here? Lucy Hartfilia groaned in frustration. The shop owner only agreed to knock off 1,000 jewels, and those guys lining up wouldn't even give up a single copy. Has my sexiness become so meaningless? After sulking for a while, she draped her right arm across her forehead like a tragic heroine. I have to read this week's issue. I heard the Fairy Queen swimsuit photos are inside. Ugh. Fine. I'll try another bookstore. This time I'll definitely get it. Just as she psyched herself up to move, a group of excited girls ran past her. Lord Firedragon is here in Harjan. Lord Salamander. The famous wizard. Quick, let's get his autograph. Salamander? Isn't that someone from fairy tale? Lucy muttered, surprised, and followed the rushing crowd curiously. Not far away, Natsu and Happy had also heard the commotion, and they were dashing toward the noise at full speed. Back in Magnolia. Over the next 2 days, all the guild's problem children trickled back one after another. Kana, Levy, Elfman, they each turned in their mission paperwork with carefully innocent expressions, as if they had flawlessly completed their tasks without a hitch. But Makarov, with the instincts of a seasoned veteran, knew better. From long experience, he understood, the worse the disaster, the harder they pretended nothing happened. Still, seeing the guild bustling again, he decided to let it slide, for now. They could always write a few more self-criticisms later. After all, the fact that the ways they caused trouble had changed, that was a kind of growth, too. Makarov chuckled to himself, savoring the fine wine Myra and Rhodes had gifted him with a small, satisfied sip. His heart felt especially full today. It was rare to see Myra, who usually restricted him from drinking all day, actually bringing some wine. Makarov's face gradually turned rosy as he sipped his drink, clearly enjoying himself. He leaned lazily against the counter, gazing at the two young people in front of him, who were supposed to be working but were really just finding excuses to flirt, and let out a tipsy burp. You two. Hiccup. Rhodes and Myra both looked up at him, curious. Makarov chuckled and continued drunkenly, when are you getting married? Myra's face immediately flushed bright red. She lunged forward and snatched the wine bottle from Makarov's hands. Master, you've had too much again. Makarov protested with half-lit eyes, not even close. Why'd you steal my wine? Don't you want to be with Rhodes? Of course I do. Myra blurted out, before realizing what she'd said. Her face turned even redder as she quickly grabbed his wine glass too. No more drinking this month. Makarov sobered up a little, startled by her fierceness, and knew. Meanwhile, Rhodes was secretly giving the old man a thumbs up. Well played, master. All that was left now was to save up a little more money, and defeat Myra head-on in a duel. Then. Maybe it would be time. You're not allowed to laugh. Myra pouted at him. I'm not laughing. Rhodes said, lips twitching uncontrollably. He really couldn't help it. Just as the old man was happily watching the young couple bicker, a postman burst into the guild and handed over a thick, heavy package. The words written on it. To Guildmaster Makarov, hit Makarov like a thunderbolt. The old man stared at the package, pale-faced. He knew this kind of thing far too well, but this time, the thickness was terrifying. Even Myra recognized it instantly. She smiled sweetly and teased, Master, aren't you going to open it? Rhodes waved a hand in front of Makarov's blank face. Master, you alright? Makarov straightened up stiffly and croaked, No, I'm fine. He tucked the thick package under his arm, hopped off the counter with surprising agility, and marched toward the second floor with the solemn air of a man going to his execution. Some things were better faced alone. Just as the old man disappeared upstairs, Max, Fairy Tale's resident loudmouth, came running into the guild, shouting excitedly, Have you heard? It's all over this morning's news. Natsu wrecked half the port in Harjan. What? Really? That's so like Natsu. Ha ha ha. Hearing the news, Makarov stumbled slightly, but without missing a beat, he gritted his teeth and marched even faster up the stairs. Rhodes let out a long sigh. Here we go again. Maybe we should go check on Master? Rhodes suggested, glancing upstairs. I'm a little worried he might collapse from the stress. He wanted to follow, but, well, it probably wasn't a good idea to disturb the old man right now. I don't think the Master wants us barging in at a time like this. Myra said gently. Seeing Rhodes' concern, she added with a smile, I'll sneak up and check on him later, don't worry. Chapter 294, My name is Lucy. Master hadn't come downstairs since going up, not even for lunch. Myra quietly went to check and found the old man had fallen asleep at his desk while writing his self-reflection letter. She asked Mr. Cook to prepare an extra meal and left it in a thermal box, ready for him when he woke up. Downstairs, the guild tavern was buzzing as usual. Everyone was still talking about the recent chaos, namely, how Natsu had blown up half the port. It was the hot topic of the day. A lot of people were wondering just how badly the Master would punish him this time. There must have been a damage invoice tucked into that mission report, right? Rhodes said with concern. Do you think the guild can cover it? If the damage was severe, the guild might need to front the compensation, and Natsu would have to pay it back slowly. That could really hurt their little treasury. Happy and Natsu's secret stash might not be able to keep it. It depends on how bad the damage is. Myra replied. From what I've heard, it's only half the port, not half the city. She thought for a moment and added. But still, Natsu did take down a criminal gang. That should help cover part of the fine. I hope so. Rhodes said. Honestly, what he did was a good thing. I remember that guy, boy, right? He used to be just a thief, but now he's gotten into human trafficking? He recalled reading about Bora in a magazine he'd borrowed from Lucky last year, which had an article from the year before that. Myra. 3 beers over here. And a roasted chicken too. Coming right up. Myra and Rhodes snapped into action. Lunchtime was always the busiest at the Guild Tavern. Suddenly, the guild doors burst open with a loud bang. Rhodes didn't even need to turn around to know who it was. Sure enough, Natsu's voice echoed across the hall. I'm back. Back. Happy echoed, buzzing alongside him. Welcome back, Natsu. You too, Happy. Myra called out, smiling. Just then, she noticed a blonde girl standing at the entrance, dragging a suitcase and blinking in wide-eyed wonder at the chaotic scene. Rhodes was staring at her. Myra pouted slightly, but from Rhodes' expression, it wasn't because the girl was pretty. She knew what Rhodes looked like when he was distracted by a cute face. This wasn't it. She made a mental note to ask him about it later. First, she went to greet the girl. Natsu. About that dragon. Krav had tried to explain a few days ago that the damage wasn't that serious, but now he tried to reason with him before things got violent. Too late. Natsu's foot met his face. You liar. It was fake intel. Oh, so that's what happened. Myra laughed and stepped aside to watch the chaos unfold, momentarily forgetting about the blonde girl. Hey, Natsu. Gray shouted. You haven't paid me back for that sneak attack last week. The two rivals immediately locked into a brawl. Krav, still reeling from the kick, joined the fray. Man up. Sis is watching. Elfman yelled, diving in like a true warrior. Then Kana, then Loke. The whole guild descended into chaos. The blonde girl, who had walked in with such excitement and dreams in her eyes, now sat on the floor in a daze, her expectations in ruins. She thought Fairy Tale would be full of powerful and elegant wizards. Instead, she saw shirtless weirdos, loud drunks, hopeless flirts. And an entire mob of muscleheads in a brawl. Hello? Myra finally remembered the girl and walked over, chuckling sheepishly. Miss Mara Jane. It's really you. The blonde girl suddenly lit up, her face sparkling with admiration. Hi. I'm Lucy. I've heard so much about you, but let's talk later. Shouldn't we stop them first? It's fine. They do this all the time. Myra said with a cheerful smile. Fun to watch, isn't it? I fail to see how this is fun. Lucy muttered, just as a flying bottle shot toward them. Before she could react, a figure moved in front of Myra. With one hand, Rhodes caught the bottle midair and casually tossed it aside. He turned around with a grin. Handsome, right? Myra clapped her hands lightly. Very handsome. Sure, she was strong enough to handle it herself. But she had grown used to Rhodes stepping in like this. It felt kind of nice, being protected by him. Besides, it meant she could enjoy watching the chaos in peace. Whoa. You're Rhodes, the fairy strategist. Lucy gasped, pointing. Miss Mara Jane's rumored boyfriend. Let me correct that right now. Rhodes said. The rumored part is the rumor. Yeah, no way would Miss Myra. But then she saw him slide his arm around Myra's waist, and Myra lean comfortably into him. Myra smiled sweetly. He's not my rumored boyfriend. He's my real boyfriend. Lucy's face flushed crimson. Her brain short-circuited. HHUA? Before she could process it, she was suddenly swept off her feet, literally. Loke appeared out of nowhere, holding her in his arms with a wink. No need to be jealous, beautiful lady. I'm here for you instead. Myra raised a brow. Loke actually dared to approach Rhodes? Blinded by love, probably. Rhodes said, eyeing the keys at Lucy's waist. Loke, she's likely the celestial spirit mage you've been trying to avoid. 3 golden keys shimmered on Lucy's keyring, 3 of the 12 zodiac spirits. Most mages would become local legends just for having one. 3? That was enough to make her the poster girl of any guild. Loke froze. His smile crumbled. He let go of Lucy and bolted 10 meters away like his life depended on it. I'm sorry, miss. Fate clearly isn't on our side. Thud. Lucy hit the wooden floor with a groan. What's with that guy? Wasn't he supposed to be one of those charming mages everyone wanted to date? Turned out, he was all looks and no backbone. Sorry about that. Loke has issues with celestial spirit mages. Myra said, helping her up. You came with Natsu, right? Are you thinking of joining the guild? Wait, really? I can? Lucy blinked, surprised. She'd assumed that the #1 guild in Fiore would have strict tests or something. Just meet the master later. But first. Myra glanced at the chaos unfolding in the tavern. It's about time he woke up. Before Lucy could ask who, A giant loomed over the hall with an earth-shaking roar. That's enough. Everything stopped. Natsu, still laughing with his hands on his hips, was promptly stomped into the floor by Makarov. You've all been up to plenty of nonsense. Master bellowed, calling out each of the usual suspects one by one, nearly everyone who'd joined the brawl. He was trembling with fury. A fireball flared up in his palm as he burned the mountain of complaint letters from the Magic Council and tossed the flaming remains into Natsu's mouth. Tell the council to go eat dirt. If all we do is worry about the people watching from above, magic will never move forward. Forge your path with pride, that is the spirit of Fairy Tail. The whole guild erupted into warm laughter and wild cheers. Lucy stood there, stunned, then slowly, a smile spread across her face. Chapter 295, Letter Natsu, Happy, your wallets. Yay. I thought I lost it. Happy squealed, hugging his little wallet and nuzzling it like a treasure. All our reward money from the last job is still in here. I've got money. Natsu grinned with sparkles in his eyes. I'm gonna order the Fire Feast combo. Lucky, I'll treat you too. My name's Lucy. And what even is a Fire Feast combo? That sounds sketchy. Rhodes raised an eyebrow. How did you two even take the bus with no money? And what about dinner? Natsu had just enough change to get us through the bus fare. Happy whispered dramatically. But I snuck some fish with me for dinner, don't tell Natsu. I heard that. Natsu growled, grabbing Happy and shaking him like a rattle. You ungrateful cat. No more fish for you next time I catch one. Happy whimpered as he was spun like a top. Lucy sighed deeply. You guys. The only time you're quiet is on a moving vehicle. Lucy, over here. Myra waved from behind the bar. The master said you can join the guild. Yes. Lucy ran over, eyes sparkling with joy. Even after all the chaos and the weirdos she'd met so far, she still liked this guild. Actually, she liked it even more because of all the weirdos. There was something comforting about Fairy Tail being so unfiltered. Plus, Master Makarov's speech earlier had completely won her over. Her heart was already halfway in Fairy Tail. Now it was fully there. Rhodes followed at a distance. The memory of that poster was already fading in his mind. Though he often tried to recall it so he wouldn't forget, the faces on it had long since been replaced by the people he saw with his own eyes, Natsu, Gray, Ursa, Wendy. Only Lucy's face had remained blurry, until now. Now that he'd met her in person, the last piece of that memory had clicked into place. Would their reunion as protagonists change the course of the future? Rhodes didn't know. But he did know that he wanted to understand Lucy better. That way, maybe he'd feel more grounded. Usually, when a new member joined the guild, a more experienced mage is assigned to show them the ropes. Rhodes had been a member for just over a year. He was no rookie anymore. His experience on missions and in combat made him a reliable senior, at least in technical terms. But since Natsu had been the one to bring Lucy to the guild, chances were, he'd naturally assume responsibility for her. Unless, Rhodes wanted to step in and fight for that right. Though he wasn't sure how Myra would react if he tried something like that. She was usually reasonable, but that didn't mean he wanted to test her patience on purpose. Can I get my guild mark here? Lucy asked, stretching out her right hand. Sure. What color do you want? Pink, please. Okay. Myra adjusted the color and size on the magical stamp, then gently pressed it to the back of Lucy's hand. There you go. You're officially a member of Fairy Tail. Lucy beamed as she stared at the fresh guild mark on her skin. I'd really done it, I joined the guild of my dreams. She wanted to run out and tell the world. Actually, she'd go tell Natsu first. Of course, Rhodes, who had joined Fairy Tail in a blur of half coincidence, couldn't quite understand how Lucy was feeling in that moment. Rhodes decided to speak to the master first. Master, we didn't back up the documents you burned. Huh? Why would we need to back up that kind of stuff? Makarov asked. It would have helped you write your self-reflection.